What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV back here for the third time today, live on the channel. And if you've been following the news, it's been going up and down. Ange out, Ange in, Ange out, Frank in. Who knows what's going on in the background of Tottenham Hotspur? We've got Sim with us. We got Mr. John Cooper back on the screen for the first time in a while. We got Mr. Johnny H as well. First of all, how are we doing, lads?
All right. Good. Yeah. Paddle. We played paddle the other day.
Yesterday, yeah.
Yeah. Yesterday. Yeah. True.
I think I'm streamed out today. I mean, like, I thought, well, just pop on for a quick half an hour stream, and then the news broke, and then it's just been like, as you say, Ben Sim, Ange out, can't be Ange out. The source isn't good enough. Then another source drops. Then there isn't any truth to it. No decision's been made. The decision has been made. Yeah, listen, it's the usual story. There's no definitive answer at Spurs. It's all a guessing game as usual.
I'm not going to ask you, Johnny, to reveal any of your sources, but have you heard any little whispers, anything about any decision being made?
I said to you, I think last week that I was told prior to the thing that he's out, he's gone, and I think the club were a little bit taken aback by the love and adulation shown to Ange, understandably. That influenced the decision. And I don't think, even if you wanted Ange to go or you decided to go, there's no way in hell you could have sacked him, on the Friday, the Saturday, the Sunday, or the Monday, because the euphoria and the happiness and the emotion that was still flowing around there would have made that impossible. And I think that whatever your thoughts are on Ange, and I'm no Ange in, but I think it would have been grossly unfair to have sacked him at that point. I think sometimes those silence can say 1,000 words sometimes, and I think clarity would have been quite nice prior to the final, maybe some sort of definitive answer that this will be his swan song. But I think ultimately the league form will see his demise. And I personally think whoever comes in now, the Ange in or people who are supporting Ange will not give this new manager any leeway. Now, he's had 22 league defeats and 17th in the table, and he's had a lot of leeway this season, rescued by that one night in Bilbao. But I can see us 10 games into this season, the next season coming. Well, Ange in his first season, he was unbeaten. This manager hasn't even managed to do that. I just think that it's going to be an incredibly more difficult season this season for whoever's the manager, because, as Ange said himself, he said it's impossible to challenge in Europe and win a competition and have a league campaign. So how is that going to be, when we have a Champions League campaign, when there's no ability to do what he did against the likes of Karabag and Elfsborg, when you're resting and playing Ajay and Mikey Moore and all the kids. You're not going to have that luxury at all. It's first team all the way next season.
Yeah. John, let's bring you in here, man, because we haven't heard from you in a while. Where do you sit on the whole? Where do you sit on the whole situation? I know you've spoken before the Europa League run and everything, and you were Ange out at that point. But did winning the Europa League do anything for you in terms of your opinion?
Not really, because I think what you've got to look at, there's the emotional side, there's the sentimental side, there's the giddiness side, and I think we all got to embrace that. And like Johnny said, there is a euphoria, and I think we should really be still celebrating it, like you said to me. I think we should be acknowledging the fact we've done something pretty historic. But I think if you were to separate that from, take off the emotional hat and put the logical hat back on, the pragmatic hat, and then you have to say, in balance of things, he does have to go. I remember we did a show, didn't we, midway through the season, we were talking about it, and we said, what is the actual benchmark for him to keep his job? And I think we both decided on win the Europa and finish minimum 8th place. So for him to win the Europa and finish 17th, that's fallen below what we set halfway through the season. So for me, yes, it's an amazing achievement, but ultimately you don't judge a manager's pedigree and style, not style, but what he can achieve by just the cup competition alone. The best metric is the league. The league table tells you more about a manager than just the cup competition. And when you factor that all in, for me, he does have to go, unless you're prepared to say we should have kept hold of George Graham, Juan de Ramos, which we know weren't good fits for us either. So from that point of view, thank you for everything you've done, winning us a cup competition. But ultimately, he's not a great Premier League manager. And that's, I'm not taking anything away from his achievement. It's brilliant. We've all had a great day out. And, I didn't think I'd ever see it again at one point. But, if we're really being honest with ourselves, he does have to go.
I get that, John. But I've been Ange out pretty much all season, but it all changed for me on that night in Bilbao, right?
No, Tim, you flip-flopped. You were flip-flopping a lot every couple of months. You were changing your mind.
Yeah.
After the Ipswich game, you were speaking to Chris Cowlin, and you were speaking to Chris Cowlin. Go, I don't understand all the Ange out stuff. Like, up for me, you can definitely get us top 4. And then a couple of weeks later, you flipped again. Then you flip back.
All coming out now, Ben. It's all coming out now.
On a weekly basis, you were popping.
Someone needs to put all the clips together.
All right, let's put it this way. I've been predominantly Ange out for the most of the season. All right. Predominantly Ange out. I've flip-flop a few times, not going to lie. It has happened. But leading up to the final, I was always saying, even if he wins it, he should go at the end of the season. But he's given us the best days of our lives, people. Literally the best days of our lives. That night in Bilbao, the parade, something that we've been dreaming of pretty much our whole life. And when you see how much the players are behind him first and foremost, never mind the fans, just look at the players, how much they're behind him. And then Ali Gold saying, they're running the risk of backlash from the players and upsetting that kind of apple cart. Like, does he not just deserve to just go into next season and just see how it goes and see if he can turn it around?
No, because I think we've had long enough with him to know what's going to happen. And I do predict if he was to stay, I think what you'd see is he'd probably do all right in his first 2 or 3 months. Not brilliant, but not even as good as the first 2 or 3 months in his first season. But you'd see a sort of like a string of a couple of games, 2-3 games where we're winning, and then 2 or 3 games where we're losing. But I think we'd be up in about 8th place, in about October time. And I think people think, maybe give this a chance. But I think we know the overall pattern with him and what's going to happen. And I just don't think that we should be giving him a chance because it's recency bias. Because let's just say that the Europa final came earlier on the season, we'd have gone through that euphoria, and then we'd kind of be on the tail end of that, and we'd be neutral again, and then we'd have all the league performances, and that's what we'd be sitting in. That's what we'll be sitting with in our kind of current memory. But because it's just recently happened, there's a sense of euphoria, there's a giddiness to all the fans, and that emotionality is sort of tainting the logic and the illogical processing at the moment, and we're not unable to see the facts in front of us, which is 17th, 1 point a game. And it's, if that was to continue, we'd probably get relegated if that was to continue into next season, with that. So we can't afford to take that risk.
Not worried the path that we're about to go down, though, without not knowing Thomas Frank to come in. I know Thomas Frank's a decent manager, but I don't know. I'm starting to worry about how this next season looks, regardless, like Ange in or Ange out.
Would you not? Would you? I
Johnny?
mean, for me, I just think for me, when the dust settles, I mean, I looked at that final, and like you, Ben, right? Waited a long time for that European success. I cried on that night. I make no bones about it. I was crying from the 80th minute. I stood there with my wife, and she's saying to me, "You're not even nervous." I said, "No, we are going to win." She said, "How can you tell me you're going to win at half time?" I said, "Because I saw how instead of going off the pitch, Kuti called them all over, and they had that huddle, and they all G'd each other up. They hugged Basuma because he had a good." And I was taken in by that moment and the euphoria and the sheer joy and outpouring, and looking at all the Spurs fans celebrated. It was a magical thing. And unfortunately, I never got back to for the parade and missed that, which I was upset about. But once I look back on the game itself, I just thought to myself, "Oh my God! We need to really look at this. Is Ange really any tactical genius? I don't think he is. I mean, let's look at it. 115 passes in 95 minutes. That's one pass every 54 seconds. And of those passes every 54 seconds, only 61% were successful. Only 27% possession and only one shot on target, if you could call it that. And when I look at that in tandem with what I was seeing week in and week out, come on, Ben Simmons, you've been to the away games, you've seen some of the horrendous away performances this season, and it's hard to swallow. It really is hard to swallow. And I thought, you know what? Okay, fair enough. We're going to have to go with it. It looks like he's not going to, he's not going to go. When he turned around and said, we gave up the league in January, I was fuming. I was absolutely fuming. I'm thinking to myself, well, hang on a minute. How dare you? How dare you say that now? Right? I go week in and week out, get in that car and I drive to Liverpool and I drive to Villa and I drive it and hours in that car. And had I known that your mindset was that, I don't actually believe what he said. I've got to be honest with you, the fact that he said it, but to actually even come out with that, with the 3,000 who travel every week, to hear that. And I'm not alone with that thought that, you gave up. Why would you need to give up? I mean, we didn't have even...
Why? What do you mean why? Were you in Bilbao? Did you see the parade?
But come on, in January, February, March, why did we need to not try in these games?
Johnny, hang on a second.
You never said not try.
You go on about going up and down the country and everything. You've gone on till the end of the season going. You've known full well for a very long time that these league games have meant nothing, and you've carried on going. So it's got nothing to do with
in January. I'm talking about when we still could have done something. I mean, we didn't have we didn't have any games. Remember, because we did well in the group stage. So
and in February, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we win 3 league games in a row? We beat Brentford, United, and Ipswich. No, it's right? Am I wrong? Didn't we?
We beat the mighty Ipswich. Yes, I was there.
Okay, but then we still won those games. We won 3 in a row. But the whole point is, it's not like he's not saying we didn't try. He's saying he deprioritized the Premier League in favour of putting all the resources, the best resources possible, into that Europa League. And that wasn't for no reason, Johnny. It wasn't for no reason.
No, we won. Look, listen, you're preparing in January for games against AZ out, and bearing in mind we lost to AZ Alkmaar, so that out in AZ. But look, that story is all very well and good, but look at how he didn't prioritise the game, for example, in Galatasaray, where he was prioritising the league, obviously, because he played a lot of kids in those games. So I'm just saying the narrative has changed and flip-flopped. I mean, you say Ben's flip-flopped. I think Ange's flip-flopped consistently with his double talk throughout the season. And I don't appreciate, and I haven't appreciated him attacking fans verbally or calling out fans. I think that
Johnny, in terms of what you're saying, right? We know that Romero and Van der Ven are coming back from 4-month injuries coming into this late part of the season, correct?
Yeah.
We know that we got to manage them. We can't overplay them. They probably can't play every game. We agree on that?
Yes, but I would also say...
Okay, wait a minute. So if we agree on that, and he's got a league game on the Sunday, and he's got Europa League quarter-final on the Thursday, what game would you prefer them to play if they can't play both?
I'm not going to... Listen, I'm not going to turn around to you and say that, is Eintracht Frankfurt a more important game than playing or a second leg at AZ when we've lost the first leg? Is it more important than Ipswich or whoever when we're nowhere in the league and it doesn't look like we're going to go anywhere in the league? I totally get that. But there was a situation, I said at the beginning of the season, listen, when we signed Cuti Romero, it was a known fact that we signed him from Atlanta that he had this muscle condition where he has to be monitored and it has to be looked after. And, Spurs knew about it when we signed him. And I said, at the end of last season, we got to be really careful with Cuti Romero. He's gone from a really long season Then he's gone into the Copa America, the priest of the Copa America. You know, he needs to have a rest. He had no rest. He had 2 weeks straight back in. And, I've documented it. You know, I spoke to many people about it. I worry that we're going to play him straight away. Same with Destiny Udogie, right? He needs to be monitored, and he wasn't.
Okay, Johnny, just quickly, I know I'm not going to let you finish, but John is going to leave soon, so I want to get his.
Right, John, sorry, mate.
That's all right. No, it's all good stuff, and I agree about that. It's what, you know, rushing. If he's deprioritized the league, why would they rush back against Chelsea then?
It wasn't then he was deprioritizing the league. Only when there was nothing to play.
What was the purpose for rushing?
He wanted to win that game. It was a mistake. No doubt about it. But, but he wanted to win the game. That's why, and he wanted to bring them back. He thought they could get through it. It didn't happen. But look, that was a mistake. Managers make mistakes. He's not the first player to rush a player back and then break down. Obviously, it was a costly one. Don't get me wrong, but it was a mistake. I'm not here to say he was right doing that. He wasn't. It went completely wrong.
What was he prioritising at that moment?
Exactly.
The league. He wanted to win the game. What do you mean? It was December.
Prioritising the Chelsea game.
Yeah.
But look, the reality is,
anyway,
Ange has made mistake after mistake after mistake this season. There's no two ways about it. But what's to say he hasn't learned from these mistakes? We've won the Europa League now. Why can't he go into next season learning from the mistakes he's done?
I don't think that he is learning from his mistakes. And I've got a theory on that. Okay, this is unpopular opinion, but I actually think that the way that Spurs are starting to play more conservatively in the cup competitions, people are saying, oh, he's adapting, he's playing more defensively because he knows that's the way to get through the games. I actually think that the players on the pitch were defying Ange ball. I actually think they were like, between us, we know how to win a game, and if we're going to play Ange ball, if we're going to play kamikaze ball, this isn't going to get us across the line. I actually think that they were taking on more responsibility and they were playing with more instinct, and they're actually forming the formation on the pitch during those games to actually shore things up and keep it more conservative. I don't think that was actually applied by Ange in any kind of tactical sense, because you see it from the touchline. He doesn't add any of that during the game to suggest to me that he actually is changing a game formationally, tactically at all. I actually think, and if you listen to the Jed Spence interview with Rio Ferdinand, they say during a game, are you allowed to change things up? And they go, no, we can't. Ange Ball's telling us we have to play Ange, we have to play that front line all the time. So that tells me that they did change things, you know, in the cup competitions, because that wasn't Ange Ball, was it? That was them playing that back.
People always say that, you know, people say that. I understand, because you look at the Frankfurt away game, you look at the final, even Bodo away. But if you look at the home games, it wasn't this sit back conservative stuff. We actually played some good football. We actually were quite attacking in those home games, right? And that's what gave us a platform in the ties.
But I think that what happens is when it gets to the crunch and the players can feel it and they really want it and the passion's there and they need to get over the line, I think what's happening is the players were becoming more leaders on the pitch and getting into the positions that they intuitively knew they should get into, and I think that's what carried us through in those games. I don't think that's Ange's yeah, exactly, but I don't think Ange was asking them to do that. I think they were defying Ange by doing that.
Maybe he was asking them to take more responsibility. How do you know?
Exactly, but I think he was probably telling them to do a certain thing, and the players are doing the opposite of what they're being asked of, and that's what actually got us over the line. That's an observation that I see.
Do you not think though? Whilst initially I got really upset with the injuries, I actually turned around to my sons and I said, "You know what, guys? This is the best thing that could have happened to Spurs." They go, what are you talking about? Because Ange now has no other way to play. He has to play pragmatic counter-attacking football. He's going to start Richie up front. I even called the team. The only one I wasn't 100% sure about whether he'd start Odobert or Johnson on the right-hand side. But I thought this is what we need to do, because if we try and play expansive football, I just felt that in the big occasion, Man United might do it. Listen, those boys, they played as a unit. We were a team, and we've seen it before. Look at PSG last night. The PSG of time gone by with the great players, the Galacticos, Messi, Neymar, Mbappe couldn't do jack, right? And yet last night they played fantastically as a team. They were 100% united together, and I just felt that camaraderie and that fight and determination. That's why someone like myself, who gets nervous about a game and like, oh, we're going to score or what have you, I was so unlike myself. I was like serene, calm as anything from that halftime whistle. And the last 10 minutes, I just knew. I was telling everybody else to calm down. We've got it in the bag. Even when the header, even with that last save from him, because I felt that the team were together. But it didn't feel like anything that Ange was installing, because he stood there on the sideline. They knew what they had to do. Cuti, Romero, Lolo, Richarlison, Porro, they were fighting tooth and nail for every ball, including Mickey van der Ven. And they were just that belief that they were going to do it.
Just quickly, John, let's talk about Thomas Frank.
Couple more minutes.
Yeah, talk about Thomas Frank. Just quickly, what is your opinion if he's the man they've chosen?
I don't know. I'm probably not the best person to speak to about that, because I don't watch many of the other Premier League games. I only really watch Spurs. So, I wouldn't be able to tell you who the best options are. I mean, Crystal Palace manager looks good for me, but I don't know. I wouldn't be able to give you the best. Johnny would probably be better suited for that kind of question, I think.
Okay, so for you, regardless of who you just want to change, regardless of who it is, or is there a?
I just think he has to go, and I don't know who you would bring in necessarily, but on the trajectory that it's going, I think I see two things that's happening here. Kind of touching on Johnny's point a little bit. I see a bunch of players that have got that camaraderie, that team spiritedness, and they all want to unite and they all believe in each other. But at the same time, I see those same bunch of players not really trusting in what Ange is trying to instill in them. And I see that they I wouldn't say lost the dressing room, because they're so united. I don't think that's the case, but I think they've lost belief in Ange and what Ange is trying to get them to do on the pitch. There was the famous scene of Maddison talking to Sonny when they came off. Then if you saw that, where he's saying it's the same play. So I think there's a disconnect there. There's a disparity of, they are very united and there's a team spirit. They all love each other. You can feel that amongst that. There's a camaraderie there. But at the same time, I don't think they totally believe in Ange and what he's trying to do.
They seem to be very behind him and, putting the post the trophy and everything, and throughout the season. I don't know.
Yeah, so it's sort of like he got it all kind of a mixture of those two things going on. But I think if there was a manager that was a little bit more tactically with it, not inept, and was able to adapt during the games, to be able to soak up pressure, in a more of a kind of a low block, and then have an out ball and then spring on teams, but also play a little bit of front foot football at times and more aggressive at times. But, being able to have that flexibility in games, I think you'd see the team really, really perform, much better than it has been. Yeah.
Let me ask you both this. If Ange was so tactically inept and, he was such a bad manager and, all the things that you're saying, basically, number one, why does it seem like every player is completely behind him, maybe apart from one or two? And second of all, why are we hearing that Cuti Romero's future is totally aligned with Ange Postecoglou?
Kind of what I was saying is because I think the players all really, really get on with each other. There's a really good camaraderie there and team spiritedness. And I think that's what carries the team through. But I think there is almost like a slight, like as fans, we're seeing it, we're sort of like a little bit confused with the formation, the tactics, the way we're being set up, the way the in-game management, all that kind of stuff. But there's a kind of a tug of war going on, I think, with the players, because there is that love, that camaraderie. I think deep down, they kind of see him as a bit of an uncle figure, and they kind of like him as a person, stuff like that. And they want to make it work. But at the same time, I don't feel like they're totally believing in the system and the way they're playing, which causes that sort of bit of a tussle.
Johnny, I saw you laughing there. Go on, don't laugh at me on my own screen.
Infamy, they've all got it. Infamy, they've all got it in for me. I mean, I just think that what he did, he adopted this siege mentality where it's us against the world, and it worked, but I don't believe Cuti, for example, who, played well under Conte, didn't say that he would leave. If Conte left, he's leaving. I don't believe that's for Ange, but I think that players will unify and will stick up for the boss until such a time as he's not there. Why would you turn around and say, no, I want him to go? You're not going to step out of line and say that. I do believe that there are certain players who will be happy that he's gone. There always is, no matter how great the manager, there's always players who aren't in his plans or haven't been given much game time. So, those players, listen, I'm not saying they dislike Ange, but I'm just saying I don't believe that you can play, 38 games 38 losses since the 5th of November 2023, since that unbeaten run, and be a professional footballer and just make out like that isn't affecting you, and you believe totally in the tactics of this manager.
That's the thing. It seems as though they are still behind him, which is doesn't that say anything? That maybe they also take a bit of responsibility with how the season's gone.
Yeah, listen, I mean, look, it's his job to inspire them. The one thing I always find incredible, like this, he's this great orator, Ange Postecoglou. Yeah, how many times have we gone to watch a game and for the first 20 minutes they come out like they've had a sedative? I never quite understand that. I mean, I watch Arteta. I hate Arsenal, right? And I hate Arteta. But whatever he does, they come out Arsenal and like someone's like their whole life is in jeopardy. And that's what I want to see in my Spurs team. I want to see that that sort of hunger and the desire to stop Man United scoring was there in abundance. Had they scored, I fear that we were ever going to do anything, but that's by the by. That ship has sailed and history will just look at the win, and I'm grateful for it.
Right, John, do you need
and
to
also,
go?
can I just? Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm going to stay on until I get the nod to go. But I just want to say on top of that, I would say we're talking about Ange as if like he's bringing the entertaining football, the Ange ball, the front foot football. But it has been some of these games towards the tail end of the season have been the worst football I've ever seen. Literally the worst football I've ever seen. It's the most stale football I've ever seen. No one is expressing themselves on the ball whatsoever. It's like 11 Harry Winks are playing. Sorry, Sim, but it is. And it's just there's just no.
My line from yesterday, John.
I nicked that from Ben yesterday. Thanks, Ben. But it has been like where is that Andrew? It's the most static, stale, god awful football I've seen in the last few months under Ange.
Yeah, but when it works, it's not.
Who wants to see that?
When it works,
in the league, it hasn't.
Well, if the manager's
but I see this all the time. Like when you talk about this Europa League win and how we've won the trophy, you always talk. You love to bring up the context. Look, we played. Look at the final points. All these different things. Oh, we put the bus, blah blah. But then you're happy to just not give context to all the negative stuff that you're talking about in terms of all the losses he's had and why it hasn't worked. You're happy to just not look into the context there, but only in the context that you want to look
into. What context do you want? Well, sorry, what context do you want?
In terms of we had 3 to 4 months of 12 players injured, and we were playing a lot of the season with Archie Gray at centre back. We had 12 of the games Fraser Forster in goal. We had Ben Davis partnering him. We're missing a lot of our key players for a lot of the season.
Fulham away. Did you go to Fulham away? I'm not sure. Right. So, you were. I stood next to you at one point.
Yeah.
So before the game, I've gone down to the front and I was watching them training. And I'm videoing it, and I was going, I can't believe this. I can't believe it. And the guy next to me goes, "What's your problem, mate?" I said, "Well, look at them. All right, Sonny, Maddison, was it Mickey van der Ven? I can't remember. And this Peter Crouch lookalike, who was the training coach, right? And they were pissing around like it was in the school playground. They were pushing each other. They were taking absolutely nothing seriously, right? And I turned around to the guy and I said, look at him. It's a fucking disgrace. I mean, I can understand that that's confidence when you're top of the league or in your top 5 and you're playing well. But when you're playing as bad as that, this is a bad look. And he gave me a really hard time. Anyway, when I was going out the stadium...
Probably rightly so. You're probably overreacting.
No, all right, yeah. Until you saw the game. And the funny thing was, the guy tapped me on the shoulder afterwards on the way out. He saw me and he said, you know what? You're right. We were disgraceful in that game. I mean, we were terrible, absolutely terrible. And, we only seemed to come alive when Bergvall went down, which should have been a penalty. That we looked
I remember the game well. It was a very close game until Romero went off and we conceded 2 late goals. That was it, really. That was pretty much what happened in the game.
We're terrible.
But Sim, you talk about injuries, all right? So
yeah,
what was the reason Archie Gray and Davies were playing for most of the season? What was that reason, do you think?
Because injuries.
Well, who exactly got injured?
Romero and Van der Ven.
Right, and why was that?
Because they got rushed back.
And whose fault? And who did that?
Well, Ange takes responsibility for that as much as Ange was at fault for it.
All right, so it was it's Ange's management that created the injury problem.
Right, look, in terms of that specific game, look, obviously it's his fault because he rushed them back, but I'm sure it was a whole. Oh, he gets the final say, so he has to take responsibility.
Doesn't matter, but that's the.
It wasn't like I'm sure he
problem.
talked to them. He spoke to the medical team, and you know, look, for Romero, it was a different injury to what he picked. It wasn't that he aggravated the injury that he was out for. He had a toe injury, came back, and then had a muscle injury. So it wasn't like the toe injury had healed. So that was just unlucky.
Everyone knew that was a bad decision. Everyone watching that said, "Don't rush."
Well, everyone obviously was nervous because we hadn't really heard anything about them playing, and then they were playing. So obviously it was clearly
the stadium was buzzing.
So that is
exactly the stadium was buzzing. We heard the news. It's
true.
But
you know what's quite interesting? You know what's quite interesting is the fact that I posted something, about Jeff Scott, who left in the summer there, about his falling out with Ange, about the training and how it is not or was not sustainable with his training methods, because Ange wants to replicate what goes on in a game in that high intensity in training. Hence the reason why we've had so many injuries taking place in training. And he was asked to ease off. They had a falling out, a difference of opinion. And the thing is, when we're playing this high line, guys, right, and the way the refereeing and the linesmen work nowadays, whereby the flag is not going up instantaneously when someone's breaking the line, they're obviously offside. The recovery runs are far greater, far more intense, constantly having to do this now. You do not want to be replicating this in training. And the fact that he actually messaged me, Jeff Scott, to ask me how I got that information, and I sort of told him, and he said, I appreciate your post, but I think he has to take some responsibility as to the intensity of that training, because it did feel like at sometimes that we were lackluster. And I don't know how much, I'm surmising here and guessing to a certain extent, how much of our game we left on the training pitch, trying to get his system and the intensity of that thing, and how many injuries. I mean, if you look back on it, there's a lot of injuries that were sustained in that, including
on the training ground.
Yeah, a lot.
And a lot of hamstring injuries. Weren't there a lot of hamstring injuries as well? Yeah.
But since I think he's admitted there was mistakes made, and of course he admitted that. He's admitted that throughout the season, that maybe they did things wrong at the beginning of the season, all these kind of things. But since the players have come back, since they've come back, whenever February, March time, I don't think there's been too many muscle injuries.
We've lost both at the end of the season. We've lost
to an ankle, to a rolled ankle. He rolled his ankle in training. Madison did his knee in a Bodo game.
Hang on. Can I just say, right now, this isn't his fault. This is the medical department, right? But we saw Dragusin go off and then making him do star jumps on his injury. It's absolutely
Decky.
And Decky happened right in front of me, and I was going mental. What are you doing? Right, get him off the pitch. Bring the thing round. No, let's do some jumps. Let's bounce up and down on your. Let's bounce up and down on your knee, and let's allow him to go back on the pitch. And then he breaks down, and he's out for 6 to 12 months. It's a serious injury, and I'd be amazed if he's back before February. So that's a massive blow to us, from a squad situation. And
okay, those injuries aren't what you're talking about. Hamstring.
No, I would say to you though, without going into too much detail, that he has been spoken to about the strain and the position of certain players. And if you look back, you can see interviews where Decky's saying he's very tired, he feels like he's overplayed, and he needs a rest. And he continued to play him continued, and he really needed a rest. It's there, it's documented. It's not something I'm making up.
That's what I was going to say. The squad rotation hasn't been good enough. You know, there are too many players that you could see were going into the red, and then nothing was being done about it, and they're playing until they're burnt out, and then they get the injury, and it's just like, okay, and then he's replacing it with another player. You've got to create some
but
kind
we
of
were in the midst
overlap,
of literally. You're talking about what you're talking about. Players being overplayed in the midst of an injury crisis where he had very, very limited options. We were barely in any options.
He could have brought Jed Spence in earlier in the season. He could have bedded him in earlier.
Yeah,
he didn't.
Okay.
He waited until it was the only chance he could have brought him in. He brought him in. If there weren't the injuries, he probably still wouldn't be playing now.
Listen, Jed could have gone elsewhere. Jed could have gone elsewhere. He talked him in, you know, to being there, and then dumped him out the Europe squad, and then we got the, expected to play in the Carabao Cup against Coventry. He didn't even start at right back. Archie gave the position to Archie Gray. And the only reason he came on was Destiny got injured at half time. And he came on. And if it hadn't been for Jed,
he didn't get injured. He just got taken off.
No, he got injured.
He did. I'm pretty sure he played on the weekend.
He got injured in the fact that he got injured and he was taken off as a precaution. And Jed came on then, and if it hadn't been for his 88th minute goal, we would have been going out of that game. But to reward Jed for the fact, I mean, imagine saying, I've got no players to rotate. I mean, whatever you want to think about Serge Reguilon, right? Okay, the guys play for Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Man United and Spurs, right? I'm sorry, Ange, right? He could have played. He can cross the ball. He could have played right in the games to give certain players a rest, but he dropped Jed the next game. And you know what, I've got to tell you, as much as I thought it was really bad how Ange dropped Jed as soon as what's name came back. Jed should have showed better characteristics than his body language in those games, in those last few games, because he showed someone who was pissed off, and you shouldn't be showing that on the pitch. You got to be professional. But I understood why he was pissed off.
He didn't drop him as soon as a dog came.
You guys are just reminding me why I was Ange out.
I'm just telling you.
Why? Well, go on, Ben. Go on, explain that. Elaborate.
I don't want to, because I want him to stay, because he's delivered me the best day I've ever experienced in my life.
Listen, Ben, I get that, right? I still
emotionally,
get back and watch my videos, right? Do you know what? Have you watched the game back?
No, I don't want to watch it back.
Right,
not the game, just the trophy. Just the trophy.
I tell you what. Do not spoil it and do what I did. Right, so I got back home, and the first thing I did, someone's deleted. I don't know how it's happened. I've got every single round. I haven't got this one. So I downloaded from TNT. I've downloaded the 1 hour version, and I'm watching this, and I'm going, oh my God, this was terrible. Was it really this bad? Do not watch the game back, right? Honestly, do not watch the game back, because it's baffling how we managed to do it, but we did it. So
we deserve
to do it. We deserve to do it.
It doesn't matter how poor the game was. How many good managers have come through this club?
I'm saying it doesn't matter. Don't watch the game. That's all I'm saying.
And it doesn't matter, right? Because all these great managers have come through the doors of the club and all have failed to win a trophy. This guy, no matter how bad the league form was, how bad the league season was, he's given us what we've all been dreaming.
Do you think Mourinho tournament?
What?
Do you think Conte and Mourinho, given the same opponents and the same squad, could have won that tournament?
Mourinho went out to Dynamo Zagreb.
I'm not saying. I'm talking about the teams we played and that squad. That squad that he had,
much better than what we faced.
Do you not think it's a better squad?
Well, we had Harry Kane. We had Bale was back there. We had a better Son. We had players who should have won that game. Put it that way.
Yeah, fair enough.
Didn't Conte lose to Mura?
Yeah, Conte lost to Mura.
See, that's the paradox, though, isn't it? That's the paradox. If you look at apart from Terry Venables, who I think he's probably the best manager in my lifetime, up there with Poch, you could argue. But I would say though that I think Terry Venables is. I think he was our best manager in my lifetime.
A coach,
I would say though. Man, manager, everything. But I would say though that that's the paradox of Spurs. Is that if you looked at our league positions in '99 when George Graham won, I think we were 11th. I think under Juan de Ramos we finished 11th. You know, we're winning cup competitions then. It's because the focus shifts onto something else, right? But that's not really what you should be aiming for. You shouldn't say, right, we're going to bring in a manager who's going to be so poor that we're going to slump down the league into like mid-table, you know, bottom half of the table, but we're going to go on this plucky cup run. I don't think as a big club they act like that. If you look at, you know, Di Matteo he won the Champions League and the FA Cup and got sacked, didn't he? And then when he got sacked, he was actually in 3rd or 4th place in the league, didn't he? That's how big clubs act.
Yeah, but we're not at that level. We haven't had a trophy in 17 years. You're acting. Chelsea have been winning titles. They've been look at what the club you mentioned, wherever they've been winning titles and more trophies more regularly than we have. We have been the pressure to win a trophy here, the need for it, the hunger has been it's actually killed a lot of managers in this position. I think the desperation to end that trophy drought has been like something hanging over a lot of managers' heads, and Ange is the only one who's broken that. He's the only one who actually
through the paradox, not because he it was like a deliberate, through the paradox of it all, because we were so crap in the league. Yeah, no, but that's the inversion of everything. It's because we were so poor. That's why the cup got prioritized. We want to call it.
Not really.
So well.
I mean,
Same
yeah. I
with
mean, yeah.
Ramos,
In essence,
right? That's
in
how
essence,
it works.
yeah.
It doesn't mean that that's like it doesn't mean it was something to be replicated. It was just that's just the nature of it.
But in the situation we were in, we had to. But I think it was the right thing to do. And other managers haven't done that. The other managers have rested players. And how many times, John, over the years, have we had easy cup ties that we expect to win that we should have gone through, and we've rested players or chopped and changed the team and end up losing and embarrassing ourselves?
Like Fulham, when he made 9 changes.
Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
When he made 9 changes. Why did he suddenly decide to make 9 changes against Fulham?
Look, there was third game in management.
Listen,
it was his third game.
Doesn't matter. It's poor management, right? That, as far as I'm concerned, right, last season, the tail end of last season, with no football, really, he complained he had no football. I've only got 41 games. I can't get my message across. What's to
complain about? We finished 5th. There's nothing to complain about.
No,
got to go, guys. Thanks for the chat.
All right, nice one,
guys.
Thanks, everyone. Nice stream with you. But was there not sight? Oh, here he comes, Danny K. Danny K.
Right, I wanted to say hello to John as well.
Special K. What was I going to say was that look at the drop off last season, guys. You know, there were signs that things weren't quite right. And I'll be honest with you, I lost 2 £25 bets that Ange wouldn't make it till Christmas. Right? I was convinced there was no way. And did you not think at any stage there was a chance with Levy's history?
Yeah, I was surprised they kept him at some points, but it turned out to be the right decision. It turned out to be the right decision.
But what stage were you? I'm just trying to gauge what stage were you surprised he hadn't.
Probably after we lost to Liverpool and Villa in 3 days, and we went out in both cups.
Yeah,
it's also after the Chelsea game as well. Yeah. I thought it was done after the Chelsea game.
Yeah. What with this?
Yeah.
People forget all these things, you know, like the mocking of the fans and stuff. These are all things, Sim. You know. I'm not.
But this is I understand that, but look, I understand all those things. It's been a really horrible season, like from that point of view, and he's been under serious pressure. He hasn't probably dealt with a lot of that very well on a lot of occasions. Yeah. He doesn't like fans shouting whatever. Look, I've criticized him for biting back at fans, all that kind of stuff. But he's clearly a very proud man. He also doesn't like the fact that his achievements are always being denigrated constantly. No one respects what he's done in the game, and he also thinks himself, I've got this like unbelievable story coming from the A-League and like how he's got to this point, and now he comes to England. He finishes 5th in his first season, and in his second season, he's won. I know, obviously, at that point he had him, but he's turned out to win the European Cup, and people throughout the whole season saying he doesn't know what he's doing. He's out of his depth, all this kind of stuff, right? And he's obviously desperate to prove all these people wrong, and he's obviously very. Like a proud person, he got unbelievable self-belief, something that obviously Maddison, I think, was talking about after the Europa League game. So I think for me, like, I'm not saying you wash it all away, but I think when you look back at those things, and in the grand scheme of things, yes, there are flashpoints and moments, but does that mean that he's not a good enough manager, that he has to be sacked? When our lowest moments, when we're struggling in the league and everyone's piling on the criticism, yes, there are loads of things you can point at as criticism left, right, and centre. But at the end of the day, we've come through all of that. The squad stuck together, and we ended up winning our first major European trophy in 40 years. That is going to bring togetherness within that whole group and with everyone and with the fans as well, because we've gone through so much pain this season, and we've still come out of that season with a trophy, with something tangible, with tangible success. And throughout that journey, he's proven when we got our players back, he can be adaptable, he can change things up, and he can get through all these games and actually win that trophy. And that's nothing to be sniffed at when you talk about winning that major European trophy. People throw all these different things, look who you play, blah, blah, blah. That's irrelevant. It's an incredible achievement for this football club to have done that this season.
No one's not knocking that. The one thing I find a bit strange that's happened, should Ange leave, is this, first of all, this thing that, Thomas Frank's the only ticket in town and no other managers there. Well,
that's just the one who's most been heavily linked at the moment.
Yeah, but what I fail to understand, it's quite interesting, is that, I remember being at Spurs after Eddie Howe had lost his job at Bournemouth, and he was in the West Stand, and fans were seeing him, and there was rumours about us being linked with Eddie Howe, and all the conversation was, "Oh my God, you can't have Eddie Howe. What has he ever won? He's never won anything. All he's done is manage a small club in Bournemouth. What's he ever won? How could you ever give him the job?" And there was a lot of that. And I got to be honest with you, even when he got offered the job and got the job at Newcastle, there were a lot of people that sort of turned their noses up at it. And when the Saudis came in, they thought that he would, probably not last that long in his job.
No, the Saudis appointed him, no?
No, they appointed him, but they thought that he would be an interim until a bigger manager came along, is what I meant, sorry. But
is that going to happen this summer, Johnny? Because they're talking about Inzaghi potentially.
I know, but my point here is that, this thing of condemning someone like Thomas Frank. I'm not saying
I agree with that.
He's not my top guy, but all I've heard today is, how can you appoint Thomas Frank? What has he ever done? What has he ever won? I mean, how many managers out there have won at the highest level that are available are going to?
We have one manager who's currently in charge, but that's the problem we have, because I think if we lost that final, I think a lot of people will be actually really happy with the Frank news and the Frank appointment, and I think there would be actually a lot of positivity. But we've won that final. We've actually got European glory. We've got Champions League football for next season. And if you're going to sack the manager that's brought that to you, you're going to want a manager coming in to replace him who's got real experience at that high level and pedigree. And Thomas Frank obviously doesn't represent that. I agree with you. I think Frank's a good manager, but he's also not a fancy name. Who's
not for Spurs.
Yeah. Well, you see, that's what I'm saying, Danny. No, but can I just add here, right? But what you're saying is I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's representative of the masses here in this thing of, the same as Eddie Howe, right? I heard a lot of voices from Newcastle looking at the press. Why are we appointing Eddie Howe? He was manager of Bournemouth. He hasn't had a job for ages. Like, why are we appointing him? We can do better than him. Right now, ask Newcastle fans, and I think there's this perception. The same thing with Thomas Frank inside football circles, and I'm talking about football, not YouTubers, not people on X, not people like me, but in football, in the community, he is very, very highly respected, right? And I think that's the problem. Is like we're on the outside looking in, and we're judging, and I think. Not only Thomas Frank, I think there's only probably one or two managers that this fan base could accept. One is probably Oliver Glasner, because he's, he won the Europa League with Frankfurt, beating Rangers, and the job the fantastic job he's done with Crystal Palace and some of the players, because they've been improved. We need, guys, in my opinion, a coach that is on that training ground every week, improving the individual players. And I think other than Lucas Bergvall, I don't look at this squad over the last 2 years and, you know, taking away the glory and all the rest of it, I don't see the progression in many of the players over the 2 year period.
Frank's a good representation of that. He is a coach and he does improve players.
Correct. I
think,
so
and also, if
Frank's come in, then are you?
So I would take.
Frank.
He isn't my number one probably, but I would definitely say that I think he would get a very hard time. But I think he's a very, very good coach. And speaking to people who I know who have had players with Frank, they all say that they all pretty much universally say the same thing. So,
Johnny,
Who invited this jabroni?
Look who it is.
Look who it is. Look who the in.
Have
Captain
any
of
of
the
you
San
seen that?
Memes.
Have any of you seen the television series? Is it thousands of stories by Brentford? They did like a series on it.
Season 3.
There's like
season 2.
there was
Season
some stuff
cancelled,
there,
mate.
but when you actually look at Thomas Frank, right, as a person, I think that's why he's respected, because he's a very likable character, and he's the way he is with people, the way he kind of gives you that vibe that everyone likes him. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of like what Pochettino had when he was at Spurs, like unite everyone, kind of that
Correct.
type of
they play
that type of feeling. Yeah, everyone who plays him, he unites everyone, and I think based on what Johnny's saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Johnny, but I think that's what you want at Spurs, is you want someone to come in who's going to unite everyone, the fans, the staff, everyone, and they're all going to like what he's doing because he's a very likable person. He's a good coach.
He's inclusive,
right?
not exclusive.
Yeah, it's true, right? And look, if Frank does come in, I'd like to see what he does. I mean, personally, I don't want Frank. I think for what Spurs fans actually want, I think they do want what Sim was saying, someone with more pedigree, But the thing is, let's be real, right? Who's available for Spurs to get right now without having to pay like without having to pay stupid money to go and get him, right?
You say Big Sam, Johnny. I was thinking about this. Did he not do pretty much what Frank's done? Sam Allardyce.
Listen, Sam Allardyce is stuck in a time warp. To be quite truthful with you, he's not a modern. He isn't a modern.
No, I agree. I'm just saying what he did with Bolton. He played some good football. Kocher, Djorkaeff, there's some good players there as well.
Yeah,
he brought Bolton up to the Premier League and actually got them into Europe and had them mid-table for many years.
Listen, Sam sort of blew it with the whole shape thing. I think it seems to be a shame that I think he's out of football out of choice rather than lack of job. I mean,
this isn't me saying Big Sam should be our manager.
Neil Warnock's available. I mean,
clip it.
We know exactly what the thumbnail to this video is going to be.
My point being, he got the step up to a big job at Newcastle.
I've got a pain in my Thomas Tuchel's right at the moment. Hang on a second. Oh.
Sean, what's your vibe check on Thomas Frank? What are you feeling about that potential appointment?
Uninspired. Not really for me. I don't mind it. Like I'll get on board it. Well, I'll get on board whatever the outcome is. I'll get if they stick with Ange. I don't think they will. If they do, I'll get behind it. My reservations.
All right, fence sitter.
No, I'm someone who just comes. I jump across fences whilst I'm figuring out all the angles, mate. This is what I do. If you're getting out your protractor like I am, trying to figure out all the angles.
On either side of the fence.
Jump zone as we speak.
I'm a verified human compass, mate. I am someone that gets all the different angles on the protractor. I get Pythagoras theorem out. And I figure out what's going on, and if that makes me jump across fences, then so be it. I think that, yeah, I'll get behind whatever the decision is. But if you give me my choice, and then Thomas Frank isn't in my top 5.
Who is your choice, Strong?
Well, after tonight's enlightenment, that apparently that Inzaghi's been having a chat with Newcastle, I'll say you can go to Newcastle.
What?
Go to Newcastle.
Has he?
He's going Saudi.
Eddie, come to Tottenham.
He's going Saudi.
If
I know
Inzaghi
I
goes
know
to
I know
Newcastle, I'll take Eddie Howe every single day of the week.
Of course, yeah. But I'm joking. It's not really happened like that. But
I like
the rumors. Yeah.
I like Vincenzo Italiano, right? I like
Very
what
good
he's done.
choice.
I really like what he's done at Bologna. You know, he's broken 70 years of not winning a trophy. He's done it at Spezia. He's come in and, you know, he's taken a very young squad. He's lost players and he's still produced. I think he would be a fantastic coach. The only problem is I think he'd probably be in Daniel Levy's office throttling him within 6 weeks. And that could be...
Jody, where did Bologna finish in the league?
They did tail off a bit. They were 4th at one stage. I don't know where they finished in the year.
Finished 9th.
9th, was it? Yeah. But listen, he's limited.
Next season.
Johnny, one thing you have to learn about Ben is when he asks you a question, he's not really asking you because he doesn't know the answer. He's asking you because he does know the answer, and it doesn't support your point.
He also said, if you clip it back, is a very good choice.
He is a good choice. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Is this Inzaghi thing actually possible?
I'm just saying because Ange did really poor in the league and he brought a trophy. Italiano did poor in the league and he brought a trophy.
Not quite as badly in the league, though.
Let me tell you something. Look at Bologna's coach. Look at Bologna's.
It wasn't Italiano though. It was Motta.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying it went down, right? Yeah.
So you know, he's done a very, very good job with a traditional team with very little budget, a lot of young players. And I think that sort of fits the criteria. The only thing is, you know, Don Fabio will have to stand between him and Levy for that one to work. I can't wait to see next season, right, the madness of Italiano and behind him, Fabio on the bench freaking out every time someone misses a ball. I miss that. I never forget that. When I first saw it on the thing, and I'm going, who's that guy? Who's that guy on the bench going bananas? Who is it? And I couldn't see because I'm on the other side of the pitch. Get the phone out and see me. Fabio. Fabio. Oh, my God, that's like... And I think that's what endeared him to so many of the fans, you know? Could you imagine him doing that under Ange? Not a chance.
The only thing that I liked about him was the amount of transfer links that were coming out on the daily. Just as I was getting started with my channel, I was like, "This guy is amazing! I can pump out 19 videos a day at the moment with every one of these legitimate sources."
If you're choosing between Thomas Frank, you said he's uninspiring. So if it's Thomas Frank or Keep Ange, what are you choosing? 2 buttons. 2 buttons.
Yeah, Thomas Frank, but not by much. Not by much. I'd like to see. I just think that there's massive question marks about the unknowns with Thomas Frank. I think that, you know, I've said this 1,000 times, that there's a never-ending line of managers that have taken teams that have been perennial relegation candidates or whatever, up and down kind of yo-yo teams, and then done well, eventually stabilized them, and then got a job at a higher team, and then not done it right. I think that there's just unknowns with Thomas Frank with regards being able to play twice a week. I think there's unknowns with regards his I don't think he's ever had to work with potentially bigger egos, you know, bigger personalities on bigger wages, those sorts of things. And I think those things they're not necessarily, I'm not saying he's going to fail in those endeavors, but I'm saying that they're unknowns. And I also think that, you know, there is a merit to the point that, you know, Tottenham aren't going to win the league anytime soon. I think we should be doing miles better in the league. But I think that at the same time, there is, you know, the question mark to me. Like Johnny keeps telling me that, you know, that this guy, and Sava says the same thing, to be honest, but I just haven't seen it yet. I know that the one thing about Ange Postecoglou, I've seen through it, so it's irrelevant to me, but the players clearly haven't, that when he gets them in a room before a big game, he can say the right words in the right order to manifest a really good reaction for a big game, right? He can get them. He's like the kind of Any Given Sunday type speech with Al Pacino. That's sort of he's got that in his locker. Apparently, so does Thomas Frank. I haven't seen any evidence of it. I'm not saying that he hasn't got it, but when I look at him, I think he's a really nice guy. He's a gentleman, and I just can't imagine him, like invoking some massive monster speech before you walk out for a final. And I think at the stage where Tottenham are at in their cycle, if you're looking for more success in the short term, then it's not going to come from the league. It's not going to come from the Champions League. It's probably going to come from a domestic cup. And on that basis, if we're going to change and roll the dice, there's risk associated with staying the same and there's risk associated with the change. But for me, I would say that if we're going to change, it has to be for someone that I have a conviction in that can take us to the next level. And I'm not sure that Thomas Frank gives me those vibes. I think I'd be more curious with someone like Shabby, however you want to say his name. I'd be really curious. I know Nagelsmann rejected us before. That's probably dead, but I'd be curious with that one. And I'd be really curious with Oliver Glasner. I'd be really curious with Inzaghi as well. But after that, we start to get to the realms. I saw today that Marco Silva's also having talks with Tottenham. If the choice if it's Ange or Marco Silva, I'm sticking with Ange. Really, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Can I just quickly say, with the way Fabio operates, there was all the talk of Raya, and then out of nowhere came Vicario. There is a scenario here where we're all focusing over here and someone comes from over there completely out of the blue. And
Rosemary guy.
Yeah, and I just wonder whether or not, something like that's going to happen, whether it's a Terzic or whether it's, whoever it could be, just someone left field that we hadn't thought was possible that's brought in. I think
Edin Terzic comes with his own set of problems, mate.
But what I think is that Levy understands now, if he's going to get rid of Ange, he has to have someone that's going to register with the fan base. And I think, the only way to do that would be to bring in a Glasner. I think we could all get behind a Glasner, even Sim, who's, very much Ange.
If I'll get behind Frank, I'll get behind I think they're all good managers. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, look, I understand your reservation of not getting rid of Ange if you're, you're a believer in Ange. For Thomas Frank, if you don't, if he's not, he's not your bad. But, if I said to you, Ange is leaving, but Pochettino's coming back, you'd be fine, or Nagelsmann or someone like that. So,
do you guys agree though? Right, like even Ben and Sim, you're more Ange, and I know Danny, I can't really understand whatever you're saying ever, so I'm never really.
I'm literally the same as you, just said it in a different way.
Yeah, a really unintelligible way.
Right now,
wait. Let Danny speak. One second, just quick. Go on, Danny.
No, I was just gonna say, I honestly think if he stays, right, I'm happy to go behind and back Ange if he stays, if they choose to do that, right. But I also feel if that does happen, I don't think he's going to change his ways, and I think he'll end up getting sacked. So then, on that merit, it's like, well, I think it's probably better to have him gone, right? Because there's no point then going with him if he's not going to change his ways. I don't think he's going to change his ways. But who knows? Look, he won the Europa League, so we don't know. None of us know. Like, I'm happy with either way. If they sack him.
Hey, do you know what? He's like, the okey cokey. Oh, the okey cokey. In, out, shaking all about that.
That's what it is. It's true, though.
It is. It's true.
You've just changed your argument from 20 minutes ago on Savage channel, mate. I can't keep up. Can't keep up.
No, I have literally said.
Well, you've got to realize about Danny. Danny's a chameleon. He likes to
plays to the audience.
It doesn't.
He only changes his spots. He only changes his color after the predator has already discovered him. It's a difference. Oh shit! They found me! Quick!
No, not at all. Not at all. I don't care who the manager is. Right? It doesn't. To me, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they sack Ange. Fine. If they keep him, fine. I don't care. Right? Whatever happens, it doesn't matter to me. I'm gonna get behind whatever they decide. Right?
Unless it
doesn't matter. If it is, then what choice have I got? I'm going to get behind it, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
I get you.
It doesn't matter.
Can I ask?
Can
I ask for the? I want to understand, right, Sim? Because I was going to obviously ask you this the other day.
Come on,
and Ben as well, right? Is there a conviction in your belief in Ange? Is it like are you like a lot of people that I think I've worked, kind of asked them enough questions to put them in a corner where I've kind of got the real version of what they believe about Ange out, which is essentially it's not. It doesn't come across like they have conviction belief in Ange, where they think, yeah, he's the guy. I want to give him all the season. I completely believe that he's the guy that's going to take us to the next level. It comes across to me like the vast majority of people that are Ange in are saying it because they feel like he deserves it because he did something that no one else has done. And it's fair enough if that's the case. But I would just make the argument that when those kind of caveats are like, well, you've got to give him the first 10 games, or you've got to give him until Halloween, or you've got to give him until Christmas, then that doesn't scream to me like it's a conviction call. It seems to me like it's a sentimental call based on giving you the best night of your life, right? And yeah. I get it. I totally get it. But as I've done polls every day on my live streams, and the swing from Ange out to Ange in was violent, and then it's just gradually just drifted back to Ange out over the last week as people are like coming down from the high of winning the trophy. And so my question is, like, are you Ange in with a caveat that if it doesn't work out, no, but they don't. No, if we signed
Thomas Frank gets appointed and he has the first 10 games like Nuno, are you not going to be calling for him to go?
If Oliver Glasner or someone that I had a conviction in was to come in, I would give them the trial, not the trial, give them the time that most managers are afforded, which is 18 months, right? On average, 18 months, which is what Ange has had, by the way.
So were we wrong to sack Nuno then on that occasion, or were we right? Or
I don't think Nuno was the right fit. I was never on board Nuno. Maybe in the first. I wasn't calling for Nuno's sacking, by the way. I would never was. But my point is that I just wonder whether or not the people like yourselves, I want to ask you, like, do you have conviction in his viability, his capability, his adaptability, all the things that you need now in the new level of competition that we're playing in? And if not, then would you, if you say like, oh well, probably not, if I'm honest, and I'll give them 10 games or whatever, then are you not also on board the idea that this summer is too important, and that if you wait and 10 games in that you go, it hasn't worked out, we've played 10, won 2, lost 7 and drawn 1 or something, that you've already then walked away from what is essentially not a particularly wet managerial market anyway, plus you've spent another 200 million quid or whatever we're going to spend on players for this guy. And by then you've basically written off next season because you wanted to go. You feel like the guy that you backed, you are only doing it because you feel like you owed it to him.
No, first of all, I do believe that he has learned from a lot of mistakes this season. I think, here's my opinion: any manager that comes in is going to have to realize when coming into this club what it's really like managing Tottenham now, and what the difficulties that you get, which you don't really maybe see from the outside, that you really only get to see when you actually start managing, which is a lot of the top managers have said happens. So for me, first of all, I do think that what Ange can do can improve us and take us on. Yes, if we have a dodgy start, the pressure will be there. I'm not sitting here saying I'll be ready to sack him. It depends, obviously, what I'm seeing.
Where's your conviction coming from then? Based on what?
That first of all, in his first season, when he first came in, lost Harry Kane, we finished 5th place. We played some good football. Yes, there were some problems, but it was his first season, and we finished 5th. That was a good position. And people say Ange doesn't work in the Premier League. Well, how did he finish 5th then? It was just a miracle. It was just luck. No, we played well.
I think he was an unknown entity. I think, like the whole idea of it's who we are. I didn't think anyone knew who we were in the first 10 games.
Amarim's an unknown entity, and
what's he done? Works.
Huh?
Sorry.
Not every unknown entity is going to hit the ground running, and it works.
No, it's not just a given. Just because you're unknown, that means it's a magical power that makes you win 10 games in a row.
No, that's a massive jump from what I just said. I'm just saying that his specific version of football is very unique. In fact, there's a reason why no one else does it. I think that's been figured out. But I think in the first 10 games, it wasn't clear. And then after that, I think people became increasingly aware of the vulnerabilities. He didn't change, they did. And they adapted to him. And I think after that, then you have all the other variables that are very important points that are regarding injuries and all those sorts of things. But generally speaking, if I think we just went through this on the last show, if you look at the first half of season 1, the second half of season 1, the first half of season 2, and the second half of season 2 in 18 game or 19 game segments, the average points per game drops by 0.4 per game on average from the first to the second to the first to the second of the second season. And if you continue on that trajectory, we get relegated next season.
Okay, but in my opinion, there's obviously reasons why that's happened. First season, not many people expected us to finish in the top sort of 6 or 7. I think before the season we were saying 7th would be a decent position, or 6th. We ended up finishing 5th overall, not just half the games. We finished on game 38.
Well, that was incredibly buffered by a 26-point head start, right?
Well, we also had showed good form from like December to April.
What do you mean 26-point head start? They didn't give us the 26 points.
Okay, wrong choice of words, but you understand what I mean. That period of time where I'm advocating that, but we didn't know who. Like it's not who we are, mate. It's no one knew who we were, mate. I think is the point I'm trying to make.
Here's the thing.
Go on, Ariane.
So I've just been listening.
You're saying, Ariane, by the way, welcome.
Come on.
I saw this stream, dude. So you're saying the brand of football, the who we are, mate, it's been figured out. I am not really convinced that it's been figured out so much as we haven't been able to play it, because a lot of the performances that have yielded positive results for us across both seasons have been in games where we've had the opportunity to play whatever kind of football we want based on the personnel we have available. So you look at the Europa League final. We didn't play Ange ball. We played a different kind of ball, and this is part of the conversation that he's able to adapt. But he's able to adapt more freely, like any manager ever who's ever existed. Any manager will have more in his arsenal when he has players that he's worked with for a long time. When we have to play,
but he had absolutely no one available for the final yet. Set up differently. Why couldn't he?
Who said he had no? Look, he had the most important part of any team. Yes, we didn't have Madison, Berg. We didn't have our creative midfield. We didn't have any. But
he set up differently in the final, right? Because of his injuries.
Absolutely, he set up differently.
So we're on the same page. So why couldn't he have set up that way throughout the last year in the Premier League?
Because the people who were unavailable weren't our midfielders; they were our defenders. Our most key, the place everybody points at. Nobody looks at the Postecoglou system and says, "Oh, our midfield's shit." Everybody's like, "Oh, we can't defend. We can't defend."
So our entire team is dependent on our backline.
Any team, I would argue, the most important aspect of it is the backline. Absolutely. You think that there's not a massive drop-off between Mickey Van de Ven and Ben Davis?
Or Archie Gray playing
at times.
Or Archie Gray?
At times there wasn't. When we beat
Manchester. There was. The problem, the reason it looks that way is because they were doing a good job based on your expectations.
Our best league performance. Our best league performance.
Out of 3 months straight. You telling me Arsenal are not going to massively struggle?
Arsenal choked the league title to Manchester City because of a Saliba injury.
Didn't we beat Manchester City 4-0 at home? 4-0 away from home without any of those guys.
But that was a one-off game.
And we drew 3-3 with it. But if you want to talk, look.
No, so sorry. Okay. My point being that if we wanted to, with the team that you're saying we couldn't do it without them, but we did do it without them against one of the best teams in world football. So my argument goes back to why couldn't we do more of that? Games.
That best team in world football went on like a 7 or 8 game winless streak after that game. They weren't on their top form, so that's disingenuous. And on top of that, you're looking at a one-off game. You're looking at a one-off game.
I'm asking why we can't template that.
Why we can't? We have templated that, but the problem is
we didn't template it. As soon as we went straight back to Ange, to the traditional version of Ange ball. You're being disingenuous.
We've had games where with the correct personnel and without the correct personnel, we've set up in a completely different way. It's a game plan, and Ange has a game plan for every single, much like Energy. He has a game plan for every single game, and some of them work and some of them don't work. The reason he has a game plan that some games you think is the wrong game plan. He alluded to this in his own press conference. He called it this the stonecutters.
Let's not go into that.
No, it's not. It's relevant because if you're trying to work towards something,
it's the most irrelevant analogy ever. That stonecutter analogy.
It's difficult for me to bring up why it's relevant when you keep jumping in the middle of my sentence.
Okay, I think you're doing the same to me, by the way, buddy. But that's
I haven't. I'm just trying to interrupt you because you started interrupting me. I was silent for the first 6 minutes in this call.
No, go on, Arian.
It's relevant because when you're trying to build towards something, like anything, if you're trying to build towards something, you can't just shy away at the first sign of resistance. And Ange said this not just with the stonecutter screen. He says when Archie Gray comes in and he plays center back, this is good for when we go through these hardships. We're going to come out with a light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes that light's an oncoming train, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's progress that's being made. The team is getting better. And eventually, I think we saw it culminate in a performance against Manchester United where it was scrappy and it was defensive and it was nothing like we'd seen all season, but it was a product of all the hardship that we'd gone through, okay, as a team. It was a ton of experience that the team gained. Very difficult experience, very valuable experience. So to say that Ange is completely I'm not saying he's not responsible one bit. There are games, and I've said this before. I think Ange, if he wanted to prioritize nothing but the points in the Premier League, he could have done that. He chose not to do that, and I think he even said it himself after he won the league. He chose not to do that.
There's a lot of things. That's the problem.
That is the problem, isn't it, mate? If you're
you
zoning in on the things
Sorry
that he said. So you obviously trust the words that he says. Should you have trusted him when he said that there was a title challenge in the second season? Should we have listened to him when he excused the first season by saying the reason we weren't as competitive as could have been because there was too few games? Second season, it was too many. When he said in the season 1 that a season where you finish 10th and win a trophy is not a good season, but in season 2, he dresses up the fact that we finished 17th as part of the Grand Master Plan. I could go on. There's a million things that he said. And if you say everything, then you're going to be right about one thing. And then if you tell everybody to remember that, I told them they didn't listen. I listened to everything he said, and I remember everything he said. And there was so much doublespeak. He took credit for Jed Spence, which was laughable. He promised us. Johnny, jump in here, man. There's about 400 examples of the things that us out of that guy's mouth.
What about last season, right? Everyone's going on about this season. Last season, right? He lost 5 of the last 7 games, right? And I mean, what was he blaming that one on, right? What was he blaming that one on?
We weren't good enough to win away from home against these teams, 100%. We weren't good enough.
But my point is that we saw this drop off, and we had the summer, and then he said, you know what? I'm very happy with my squad, and I feel
had a horrendous record away in the Big 5 team.
Hang on a second.
Okay.
I'm just saying, we lost 5 of our last 7 games, which stopped us getting in the Champions League, and by default, it actually helped us because had we finished in the top 4, we wouldn't have won a trophy. So for that, it's a bonus. But he said when that transfer window closed, I feel confident that the squad I've assembled here is strong enough to compete both in the Europa League and to have a good finish and a good challenge in the Premier League. And, the double talk and the narrative, we could go back and look at all the things he said, but acknowledge what you said and how you've completely flipped it. I don't care if I get the sack, I can get another job. I don't care about this blaming the fans, attacking the fans, the double talk. There's so many things. He's become his own worst enemy in so many of these situations.
Yeah, and the stonecutter analogy, by the way, is the most brilliant piece of work by a wordsmith I've ever found. I consider myself to be a not bad salesman. He absolutely smashed it out of the park with that one, because what he gave himself was an indefinite reprieve of any kind of accountability, because he could be losing for 5 years straight and then say, when I finally get sacked, we just weren't at the 101st.
We didn't, did we? We won a trophy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we did. But let's just be entirely honest. The gravitas attached to a Europa League in its current format far exceeds the complexity of winning it.
I think the diminishment of the trophy is smaller than the lower of the quality of the trophy.
If that was true, and that this Europa League was really easy to win, we were not the favorites for this Europa League for a very long time. The only time we were really favorites was
we were the favorites.
No, we weren't. If we were the favorites in some betting market, fine. But if you go and look at anybody's predictions, Bilbao and Man United were by far everybody's.
Anybody's predictions? What are you talking about? The betting market is the market. The betting market is the market. That's where people put their money where their mouth is. Anyone can have an opinion for free. When you put your money where your mouth is, that's a legitimate opinion. And the most money went
at what point in the competition were we favorites? At what
we were
point?
favorites from the second round until all the way through until the final.
No,
and then more money went on Man United for the final. That's it.
Most English teams always favourites for these competitions.
I don't think we were favorites for the final.
Spurs weren't the favourites.
We weren't. I'll tell you this: we weren't favorites for the final in the US betting markets. I'll tell you that.
And let me just tell you, the only time we weren't favourites was when we got to the final.
That's it. To the final.
Where we became Man United were 8-11 and 4-6.
And also on top, look, and you say anybody can have an opinion for free. You had an opinion. Were you of the opinion that Ange is going to win this trophy?
Yes,
I was of the opinion that we're going to win this trophy. Do you know what I said?
Put my money where my mouth was. Arian, to answer your question, I put my money where I bought my flights, my ticket to the game. I spent £1,100 on the ticket to the game when Tottenham hadn't even finished in the group stages, in the league stages.
It's true.
true.
Fair enough.
Right.
You want
But
to hear double speak, Sean? Throughout the whole season, you've been
Yeah.
saying if he wins this trophy, he should be getting. He said, "What are we doing here if we don't give him another season?" You said,
Yeah, 100%. And like I say, I'm still okay with him staying. I'm just saying that I've seen through once you walk through the Overton window, you can't come back.
"That's
Once
what
you,
you're saying. You're saying you wanted to sack him."
no, I'm saying no. I've said on this stream right now. I've said it all week. I said I understand that on a meritocracy basis, if the club decide to go in that direction, I will totally get it, because I think that for what it's worth, I think Daniel Levy is in a no-win situation here, and I'll tell you why.
absolutely.
I think if he changes
Yeah,
the manager,
agree,
or
I
if he
agree.
stays, or if he keeps the manager, whatever happens, if the season starts out badly, you'll have the people saying, if we keep him, they'll say, why did you keep him? The evidence was obvious. If you change it, then and it starts out badly, they'll say, Daniel Levy, you're a bozo. You just sacked the best manager we've ever had, or the most successful manager we had in 40 years. So he's on a lose-lose if we start badly. And if we start successfully, Daniel Levy won't get the credit. It will be well done to the manager for taking this team and having a good start to the season. So again, it will be the buck stops at the top for the failure, and the buck stops somewhere else for the credit, like it always is with most Tottenham fans.
Some of the double
Levy's on a
speak
fighting
you-
for nothing anyway.
Some of the double speak you complain about, and you, I think it's just disingenuous. When you were saying, "Oh, he complained about too little games in the first season and too many games in the second season," I think that's disingenuous to pull him up on that. The first season, obviously, we weren't in Europe. We had quite a big squad, and we had quite a bloated squad, which would obviously get people need game time, and he didn't have enough games to give everyone game time. And there wasn't a problem in the first. Wait.
Can everyone stop calling me disingenuous? It's a really it's a nice posh word of saying that you're a liar or you're twisting the facts.
You're twisting the fact. You're
I'm not
twisting.
twisting
Yeah,
the
you are
fact.
twisting.
We're
You're
saying that.
twisting it to make
Or
it
you,
look like.
you dropped the first
No,
disingenuous,
no,
mate.
you're-
You
you're-
started it.
you're-
No,
you're
I didn't
twisting
drop
what
the first
he's saying,
disingenuous.
making it
Harry
look
did
like
the first
his line-
disingenuous.
Like the Ange's line was completely.
Check
he's
the tape.
completely
That's
flipped what he's saying.
disingenuous, Ben.
Yeah.
Don't be disingenuous.
First season, there wasn't a problem. He finished fifth. Okay, there wasn't a problem. He wasn't complaining. He was just saying he's got a lot of these players, right? And we're only playing once a week, and he didn't have enough games to give everyone. That's fine, right? But he finished fifth. There wasn't anything to complain about. It was a good season. He said that many times. He was happy with the finish. The second season,
How can he be? Hang on. How can he be happy with the finish, Sim? With the greatest respect,
finish in the league. Okay, I know we lost 5 out of 7. I get it. But
yeah.
we
We did beat. In fairness to him, we did beat Burnley and Sheffield United in those.
Okay, in his first season after losing Harry Kane, he couldn't develop a team to win away from home against the top 5. Fair enough. Okay, we finished fifth. I get it. Second season, he's complaining about too many games. Not in general, in the midst of an injury crisis, he's complaining about it because we've got 12 players out and he's playing every 3 days, and that's what he's saying. We've got too many games and to handle the situation that we're in. That's the context of what you're missing here. And then you complain, oh, he's double speaking. It's not the case. It's not that you're saying, oh, he's
double speaking is when you say one thing 1 minute, another thing other, that justifies a mistake in order to make yourself right.
That's not what he was doing, though.
That's not what he was doing.
I'm just giving you context of both quotes.
Throughout. He's done it throughout the season as well.
But I'm saying you those
Or
ones you
here's
pick up
another
is
example
true.
for you, mate. Here's another example for you.
Go on.
Injuries are not my fault. You know why injuries aren't my fault? When everyone's challenging, all the media are challenging about injuries. Injuries aren't my fault. Why? Because we don't train anymore. Right? 2 weeks earlier,
Did he say the words injuries aren't my fault? He said those words.
Yes, injuries are not my fault. Injuries are not our fault. Nothing to do with the training. We don't train anymore.
He said that. Did he say injuries are not my
Yes,
fault?
he did. Yes, he did.
Well, okay, what's the point?
Are you implying that? Go on.
No, he absolutely referenced that injuries are not his fault. Whether he said the phrase "injuries are not my fault," I'm not going to sit here and say. I'm paraphrasing potentially.
He didn't say that. Okay.
No, he did. He literally said to answer the question: Are you overtraining players? Is that the response with the injuries? No, it can't be that because we don't train anymore.
Right? Are we? That's the response. Are we overtraining players? And he's saying no because we're not training.
Are the injuries as a consequence?
Right.
Mate, you know what? You carry on. I'm going to go and find the quotes on the berry.
Hang on a second. I'm going to tell you something, right? I can tell you categorically. I can tell you categorically, for a factual point of view, that more than one member of the training staff turned round to Ange and said, "We have to ease back," and he turned around and said, "It works at Celtic. It will work here. I will carry on."
There's no way he said that. There's no way. I'm sorry. There's no way.
Listen, well, you can tell me whatever you like, mate, right? Because I fucking know. Right?
No, there's no universe where somebody goes to Ange and says, "Hey, mate, we're training," and he goes, "Well, it worked at Celtic. It's gonna work here." He didn't say that. I don't believe you. I do
All
not
right,
believe
well, don't believe me.
I don't believe you. That didn't happen.
Did you hear it firsthand? Listen, it might be secondhand Chinese
I
whispers
believe
we're
you, Johnny.
hearing. Like I don't. I'm not saying I don't believe. I don't believe you heard that. I'm not saying I don't believe you heard that. I'm just saying.
heard it.
Is that what happened? I don't. Do we know that for a fact? I don't know.
Look,
I believe you, Johnny.
look, let me just say, Sim, that when I get like team stuff or stuff, I'm not the rat or the mole. I'm not the mole.
Watching. He's looking for the mole.
Let me tell you something. Every club, every single club has a mole. I mean, that's the other thing.
Multiple.
The mole, right? The mole. I mean, that was a laugh.
Tottenham's very own mole over here.
When I found out, the mole. Every club has always had a mole, and yes, information comes out from training and from other areas. Where do you think Paul O'Keefe gets stuff? Where do you think the guy?
There's people involved in deals. I get it. All I'm saying is it's quite frustrating when you're arguing. You have kind of a piece of information no one else knows. And we can't really argue against it because you've heard something.
No, listen. Sim, look, I get it, and I have to be careful because I've been told off before, right? Not by you guys, but by others. So, but what I'm saying is that all I know is that there were concerns. And listen, when I got Jeff Scott messaging me, right, and saying to me that, how did you know when I've done something on a tweet? I know I'm on the right track. Look, not everything that comes out is gospel. That much is sure. But just
to back Johnny up here, he might not be able to verify things, but he sent me texts and things that he's got from the people that he knows.
I don't doubt Johnny's gets
it's not that I doubt Johnny.
When it comes to little conversations on the training field like that, word to word, like do I like maybe it was done in a different kind of maybe it was done in jest or something. I don't know. It's hard to get like tone and all these different things.
Questions.
You're saying it's hearsay, right? It's hearsay, so it's inadmissible in court.
I understand.
There you go. It's not what happened, Shawnee. It's about what you can prove in court.
That's fair enough.
Listen, there's also
I'll make your argument for you. Okay, Sim is easy. Hand over to me, buddy.
There's context for how something is said, but there was concerns. Look, the fact that Jeff Scott left because he said it wasn't sustainable, right? Is a guy who's been there for 20 years, right? And he's telling Ange, this is not sustainable. And Ange said, well, it worked at Celtic and I'm not changing, right? And the guy leaves having an argument with him I'm sorry, right?
Jeff Scott have a lot of problems, a lot of managers.
I was gonna say Jeff Scott isn't like this figure who has not been through an injury crisis. I mean, under Mourinho, we had that ridiculous injury crisis. I remember we had like those center backs.
Right? 20 years. He's worked. Listen, he's worked with Mourinho.
Historically been very successful for 20 years.
He's worked with Mourinho. He's worked with Conte. He's worked with Pochettino, right? And he's had no major fallouts and no major bust-ups with any of these. And these
he had one with Kane. He had one with Kane because Kane, if you remember, after his hamstring tear against Southampton, got a personal what's it called? It's not a trainer, but he got like his own guy. That's why he didn't get injured for like at all. But there was like every season Kane would get an ankle injury and an injury here and there, and then after his hamstring tear, he got a different one. That's not even like. I can't
go into what's happened this year about certain players within the squad, right? But just to say that it's been a bit of a shit show, and they're trying to correct it. But when you're putting adverts in on LinkedIn. You're a professional organization, right? You are looking after multi-million-pound assets, right? You don't put an advert on LinkedIn. What you do is you go to a top agency, a recruitment agency, and you find the best nutritionists in the world, the best headhunters. You look for the best of the best. That's what top companies do. Unfortunately, it's a bit of an amateur hour, which is why Vinny and Fabio and what's going to come in, we're going to be big changes in the summer, and it needs a major overhaul.
No, this isn't a what's called a killer. What I'm about to say, a killer point. But I'm looking at his Football Manager statistics, Jeff Scott, and for fitness, he's 13 out of 20. I mean, that is shocking. That is shocking. Surely
Right.
you need a
Managers
physio
over the
that's
course of
20
the
out of
years
20.
have laid into the.
I was just
laid
going to
into the
say,
fitness.
they
Conte did it,
realised
Jose did it. I'm sure Poch had it as well. You know, what I mean, this is
he
the
lasted. Look, he
time
lasted
Levy's
there.
running, mate.
I'm
Adverts
just
on
saying.
LinkedIn.
I'm just saying, right? Look, it's no coincidence that he left and we had the worst ever injury crisis. But the point I was just going to make, just
It kind of is.
just
Because
to
we had
end
the
on,
same thing last year.
look, we didn't have a cryo chamber, right?
It was not the
Contact
same
to go
thing,
mad to
Ariane.
get a cryo chamber at the club. Look, the fact of the matter is that we've worked out that our medical and our medical facility at Spurs isn't big enough and isn't fit for purpose, but we don't have the money right now to actually extend it. But that's going to be done. But that should have been, rather than have a golf course and a lovely garden, I think the priority should have been adequate medical facilities for our thoroughbred racehorses.
See you later, Danny.
See you later, guys. I'll be watching later. I'll be watching. Yeah, I'm tired, man. I'm gonna go to bed. See you later, guys.
Okay. Take care, Dan.
Have you found
See you
the
later,
quote
boys.
yet, Sean? You managed to.
Yeah, just before you
I
go,
stopped,
Dan.
I stopped looking actually. I'll go back
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Before you
couldn't
go,
find
Dan, before I speak to you tomorrow, right now, are you in or out?
What with Ange?
Yeah.
I honestly don't care.
Nah, that's not an answer. That's not an answer. That's not an answer.
I don't care.
There is no don't care. Two buttons, Danny. Two
I
buttons.
don't care.
If you were Levy,
If I would pick one, right? Honestly, if I'd pick one,
Go on,
I'd say I think it's better to get rid of him because I think what he's done is really good, right? In terms of achievements and success. But I don't believe personally that he can sustain that or sustain a level where we can be competitive. What all Spurs fans wants in all competitions, I haven't seen the evidence that he can do that in all competitions. And the thing is, what all Spurs fans want is not going to be able to do that. And I personally think if they give him the chance, which I would still be happy if they did, like as in I wouldn't be against it, right? But I still believe that he will probably end up getting sacked because I don't think he's going to change his ways in the Premier League, which is where the bread and butter really is, and what I think Levy is really looking at. If I'm honest, from their perspective. I'd be interested to see what Frank can do, but if I'm honest, I'd probably keep Ange if it's Ange or Frank.
you don't rate Frank.
If it's Ange or Frank, I'd probably
Frank?
keep Ange because I feel that he's not much of an upgrade to Ange, if I'm honest. Because people saying they want Frank, right? But the reality is Frank has not proven that he can manage a team at this level for what we want to achieve, right? And then do it with multiple competitions and manage a squad like that. He hasn't done it. So that's something he's inexperienced, right? So if we're gonna change the manager, it's gotta be someone who is more experienced to do that. Now, if you tell me we're gonna go and get Glasner, 100% I'm backing that, right? Or you go and get a Xavi, or go and get someone or like an Inzaghi. If you're gonna say do that, 100%. But Thomas Frank, like Sean said earlier, and on Savage channel, he's not lighting the fire inside me to say, do you know what? He's worth the risk. Like for me, Frank is not worth the risk. If they decide it, I will still get behind it. But I just don't think he's good enough to manage Spurs. It's people forget, right? Before I go, people forget that Tottenham are a club that wants to compete, or the fans want us to compete for the top 6 position, top 5th, maybe even top 4, and then on top of that, compete in Champions Leagues, in the cup competitions. But in order to do that, you need to have a manager that's good enough to do it and a squad full of quality, right? So again, it's a lot of variables that need to happen for that to happen, for us to be that team that we all want Spurs to be. And I just can't see Levy changing his ways to buy quality. That's what I don't see. So that's why it doesn't really bother me what happens. But if we're going to pick one, I'd say I think it's probably worth the risk in getting rid of Ange, only if it's a better manager who's more proven, because it's just not worth it. I'd rather keep Ange every time with Frank all day, every day. That's what I'd
Big
say.
up, Danny. Big up to you, my
Big
friend.
up, guys.
Nasty,
I'm gonna watch now because now Stell's come on, so it's gonna be interesting.
It's gonna be very
Stel,
See you later, boys.
welcome, Stelios, it ain't party time without the hat, mate. Where's the hat?
The hat's gone, eh? The hat disappeared.
Yeah, I've first of all, good evening, good morning. So nice to see some faces with smiles on them on YouTube. How unusual just to see people with a bit of happiness in their life supporting Tottenham post European glory. It is a rare commodity nowadays on YouTube on Tottenham. But listen, good to be on the show, guys. Good morning, good evening, whatever time it is. I don't even know what time is it. Let's have a look.
We've heard your opinion on obviously Ange staying or not, but with the recent links to Frank, what's your opinion on potential Frank replacing him?
It's a sideways move. What's he done in his career? He's won nothing. He's good at developing players and putting teams together that finish mid-table. You know, let's just keep it as it is because nothing will change in my view if we bring in Frank. He's so tactically good that in the 4 games that he played Ange, he hasn't won a single one. He's lost 3, drawn 1. Frank hasn't beaten Ange once. So what are we doing here? If we're going to get rid of Ange, you've got to bring in a top manager, right? You've got to justify it. Whether I like it or not.
Like who?
Who?
Yeah, just out of curiosity.
I'm not against Glasner because he did it in Frankfurt and he did it with a Frankfurt team that was in a so-called stronger European format when he won the Europa Cup. He's done it with Crystal Palace, who have never won anything in their lives. So for me, he's got a fair bit about him. He does set up his teams that are much harder to break down and beat. He beat Ange twice. He beat Ange twice this year. So if you're gonna sack Ange, you've got a minimum bring in a Glasner. My biggest concern right now, guys, is more than anything is destabilizing that dressing room. Okay. Yeah, now, Johnny, I know you've got sources. I've got a few as well at Spurs through work. And from my understanding, there is a very, very happy camp between manager and players right now at the club. At times, it was tested during the season, but right now, it's a very good environment upon which to build. That doesn't mean the next manager that comes in can't replicate a good environment, but why break it? Why fix it when it's not broken? So the only way I think you change manager and don't break the environment, that manager has to walk in and the players immediately say, yes. What, they feel it immediately. I don't know who does that. I don't know who we realistically... This talk of Inzaghi is absolutely... It beggars belief. You don't think we're going to get Inzaghi? In which world are we getting... We couldn't handle Jose and Conte, a big name manager that gets paid a hell of a lot of money. It won't work at Tottenham. You look at the players Inzaghi deals with and the players we have, it's not going to work. It has to be a lower level manager, but someone that's got a bit of clout. Maybe Glasner is that guy, maybe. But I struggle to see what manager we realistically bring in which doesn't risk destabilizing the dressing room and certain players saying, look, thanks, but it's not for me anymore.
What are we destabilizing though? This team that's won how many games in the Premier League this year? Like I don't European Championship.
Sure.
You can't. It's a different style of football, mate. Cup football's different to league football. You have to get back to some level of like serenity in the Premier League. You have, because you're not going to win the Champions League. I don't care who the manager is, unless Daniel Levy, who's not going to do it. He's not going to drop 300 million quid. Is it? So you're not going to win the Champions League. You're not going to win the Premier League. So your only route back into Europe next year is either via a cup, and that's in order to do that, you have to beat people, maybe 3 or 4 teams, depending on who you get in the draw. But you have to beat a lot of teams that are going to be better than anyone we beat in the Europa League. And so with that being the reality, I'm just sitting there thinking, like, yeah, the team might be right behind Ange, but if they were right behind Ange, then why couldn't they have done a little bit better than they did in the Premier League? I think that this notion of, also I think that they're employees of the football club, so they'll kind of get what they're given a little bit, in my opinion.
And obviously still
can I answer that quickly? Then I'll go to you, Johnny. It's a very quick response. Sign players so that when we have to rotate, there isn't this massive drop off, because right now there is a massive drop off when we have to rotate. And this has happened to every manager at Spurs, not just this isn't just an Ange issue. This happens to every manager. This year was just more severe than others. You know, he has proven he can get top
between the first 11 and the rest is smaller than it has been for years at Tottenham.
In certain positions.
Not with the front three and the midfield. It's not.
No,
defensively, you could say maybe because we've got Spence, we've got Danzo now. You know, but again, that Danzo and Kinski signing only came in January. For me, Sean, I haven't been happy with the front three all year. Regardless, I think it's an atrocious front three.
I don't think Solanke's as bad as I think you don't, or you do, and other people. I think a lot of people. I think I might be in a pool of one. I think Solanke is a workhorse in a sacrificial.
I'm with you there. No, I like Solanke. I'm with you there.
But I think that I agree with you about the wingers. I think the wingers are atrocious at Tottenham.
Can I just ask you, Stel, because you know, having had conversations with you and seen your comments.
Yeah, call me a flip flop and I'll reply. Go on, get it off your chest. Get it off your chest, Johnny.
No. I just you're someone that nails himself to the mask and doesn't normally move from that. And I'm very much the same. You know, something seismic would have to happen for me to change my opinion. But I was, of all the people that I know, your change was for me the most alarming.
Surprising. Yeah.
When someone told me, I thought you were actually just joking and you're like just joking around, that you had like suddenly said I'm Ange in, and I said no, Stel's just pissing about. What happened?
I'm not Ange in. I'm Ange start the season, and do you know what it is, Johnny? I don't think people heard anything I've been saying. I think people picked the bits they wanted to hear that I was saying because it was so Ange out, get him out, awful. I said for 2 months, if Ange proves me wrong, and I was like you said, I put my mast in the ground. He won't prove me wrong. He ain't winning diddly squat. If he wins that Europa, he deserves the start of next season, and I will come on and I will apologise to Sim. I'm literally sticking to my word, Johnny. I'm sticking to what I said.
I apologise. I hear where you're coming from.
No, I'm not asking you to apologise. I'm answering your question.
No.
Because you said to me, I can't believe that I moved away from such a strong position. But I said I would if Ange proved me wrong. Johnny, I never thought he was going to win that Europa. I never thought he'd ever change his tactics. I never thought this guy would be pragmatic enough and just play differently to win a trophy. But he did. Every other manager at this club had that chance of beating easier teams to win something, and they didn't. He comes along and says, "Look, I'll win it," and he did it.
What has cup football is very different to league football. What has changed in his approach to league football that gives you the confidence that the first 10 games will manifest into different outcomes, and if they don't, and we decide to make a change after 10 games, that's not a conviction call, Stelios. That's not. It's not saying you believe in him. You're saying he's earned it, which are two.
I'll answer it. Okay, so I'm going to list you. I'll write this down. These are the games we lost when our first choice defence was available. We lost to Arsenal, Brighton, and Palace. We beat Everton, Brentford, United, West Ham, Bodo twice, United again, and then we drew a couple. So his win rate was 61%, draw rate was 23%, loss rate was 15%. When he's got his first choice defence,
bottom half teams. All the ones you just named there were bottom half teams, right?
But these are the only games we had the first choice defence in which to get the data from. But so I can only go by that.
I know you can, but that statistic that you're saying that doesn't exactly give a sort of.
Well, Brentford were above us. Frankfurt were the third best team in Europe that we all said, God help us when we go away to their ground. United, we haven't won at their ground in God knows how long. The point being, Sean, is I think he can get top 6. I think he can do it. Do I think he can get top 6 and win a trophy? No manager at Spurs has done that. Never.
Why do you think he can get top 6?
He's gotten top 6.
Because he's done it before. He got 5th.
Season 1, but season 2.
And Sean, he could have got top 4 if fans like me didn't wish Man City to beat us against Arsenal to stop Arsenal winning the league, right? That stadium was
another thing. I called you out at the time. I didn't call you out directly.
Come on, man. I was there when you.
But Sean, I'm owning that. So he
no,
couldn't.
But I'm not making this about you. I think that Ange Postecoglou. We use the word disingenuous a lot here, right, tonight, apparently all aimed at me. Ange Postecoglou was incredibly disingenuous when he called out Tottenham fans, like yourself, Stel, for saying it's surprising, really surprising to me, which is another word of saying it's disgusting, that Tottenham fans would want to deprioritise beating Manchester City because it was more important for Arsenal to not win than for Tottenham to win. And yet he deprioritised the entire second half of the season because it was more important to win a cup trophy. That was disingenuous.
That's not the same thing.
That's
It's not the same thing at all.
Come on.
It's the same thing when you pay for a season ticket. It's the same thing when you pay for a season ticket.
And listen,
Sean.
The last
in the run-in from March, where we were managing these players back from 3-4 month injuries, a lot of them, right? Where they couldn't play every game. Correct? Or are you saying Romero and Van de Ven, when they come back, they can just play every game and he can just
Pedro Porro played every game, didn't he? He didn't.
Yeah, they weren't managing 3-4 month injuries.
Pedro Porro was managing 4,000 minutes in a season.
Yeah, but he wasn't managing 3-4 months, and also he was being rested in Premier League. But anyway, so in some games, if he's got a choice, we've got a Premier League game on the weekend, and you've got a quarter final of the Europa League. What game would you rather he played Romero and Van de Ven in?
Still, last season, right?
Why wouldn't you prioritize Europa League?
I tuned into your show and you were going mad, and rightly so, because I was joining in. That Spurs, in their last 7 games, only lost 5 of them, and the only 2 they won was Sheffield United and Burnley, right? Yeah. And you were saying like this guy's a joke, right? And I agree, but it just so happens that tail off was a blessing in disguise, just the same as the injuries that befalled our entire creative midfield was a blessing in disguise in that final. Because I turned around to my boys, we're all upset, we've lost this, what are we going to do? I said, we're going to win it, because he's going to be forced to play pragmatic, counter-attacking.
Oh, we had Madison for Frankfurt and we still played pragmatic.
Right. I'm just telling you, right? Okay, you think there was another way of playing that game, do you?
I don't. I'm saying he was going to
play pragmatic I'm saying you. So that's what I'm saying to you. He was forced into.
He was going to do it anyway.
Right. He was. You honestly think that if Bergvall, Madison, and Porro, Kulu were fit, that he would have played exactly the same?
Yes, because we saw it against Frankfurt.
Then why did we die on the hill for 18 months, mate? It's who we are.
Because cup football is. You said it, not even he.
Cup so it's who we are until it matters, and then as soon as it matters, it doesn't. It's not who we are anymore.
I think, guys. I think
I'm never going to change, mate. It's who we are, mate.
Sean,
for 18 months,
it's clear to me.
His job was on the line. His reputation was on the line.
Maybe he learned from his mistakes.
The guy is a wordsmith and a salesman, and
we played in the Europa League run in the home games. We did play good attacking football. We did play good attacking football. We weren't pragmatic
because he says one thing and then he says it for all day long.
Sean, are you judging him by what he says or what he achieves?
I'm judging him. If you're talking about, if you type in a
that's the question. Which one is it?
If you type into ChatGPT, what is the profile of Ange Postecoglou? Explain to me what his skill sets are. Number 1, he is a wordsmith. He can find the right words in the right order. But when you see through it and you realize that he'll say whatever he wants to say to make sure that he's right, and the criticisms against him that are very fair and very reasonable are always inaccurate, always misled, always that when you take the context out of it, then you can't see through it. Once you go past that line, you can't come back. Maybe a lot of you guys haven't come past that line yet, but when you do, you'll realize that once you've seen through it, you can't.
But he also said, "I win a trophy in my second season." Why do we dismiss that?
He also said there'll be a title challenge in his second season. What happened?
So
to
you
that?
haven't answered my question, though.
You didn't say that again, did he?
I'll ask again. Do you go by what he says or what he actually achieved?
No, I go by what he says and what he does. And what he says is one thing and what he does is another.
Okay, I go by what he's achieved. And in his first season, listen, by the way, can I just clarify this? I've got concerns about Ange, guys. That's why I said he deserves to start, not give him the whole season off the bat. Because my concerns are, if we do get injuries, if he does have to rotate, that he can't tactically adapt in the league like he does in cup games. Until he shows me that, then he'll get himself sacked anyway.
Right.
I think he just
ruined still. By then the season is ruined, isn't it?
Not if you sign good players, because then the next manager inherits good players, not a bunch
This is
of
what I wanted to say.
wishy-washy players.
Sacrifice a whole season. See, this is what you're saying, is that you're willing to sacrifice 10
Why would the
games.
whole season be sacrificed? We're not going to win the league. We're not going to win the league, Johnny.
I know, but his look, I don't believe in his talent.
What are we sacrificing
right?
then?
I don't believe in Solanke, and I don't believe in some of the other players that he signed, right? I don't believe that they're of high enough quality. And that's my personal opinion. It doesn't mean it's right. And I just think that if you give this guy, 150 million pounds in the transfer budget, I just think that we're not going to move forward. I just think you need to analyze the fact that 38 defeats he's had since November the 5th, 2023, and yes, he's had injuries, and I accept that, and he was forced into making a makeshift defense. I totally accept that, but you can't have it for 18 months. You can't run the same excuse for 18 months. The end of last season, there was another excuse. When we were playing Arsenal and he was asked before that Man City game, how important is this game? Because we were going for fourth place. Every game's important. Yeah, but this is a London derby, right? The shit that he was coming out with there, that he didn't care, this was just like any other game, is nonsense. When you've come from playing... When you've gone from managing Celtic and you see the rivalry between Celtic and Rangers, you know it, you understand it. You're just playing the bloody press. So when we lost that game, and we were 3-0 down through set pieces again. But when it came to the Man City game, when he wants to beat Pep, he took that anger and that loss out on the fans, not on himself, on how we set the team up or the fact that they lost.
Fans were happy in Bilbao, Johnny. Fans were very happy in Bilbao. They weren't too bothered, they were all singing his name at the parade. Johnny, can I ask you a question? Johnny, serious question here, right? And by the way, like I've said, I've got concerns about Ange, which is why I say he deserves to start to prove me wrong again. If I said to you, Spurs are going to stop all this Conte, Mourinho, high-level, big ego managers, they're going to bring in someone else. It could be a punt. It might work out. It might not. We don't know. They're going to bring in a manager. It's going to be a 4 or 5 year project, a plan. And they're going to build youth and then maybe some experience. I don't know, but there's a project. And I said to you, in year 1, the project will get us top 5 and back in Europe. In year 2, we'll win a European trophy and qualify for Champions League. If at the start of the project, I said to you, that's how it would go, would you take that project or not?
Yeah.
Wait, just one before we answer that, Johnny.
That silence answers a lot, doesn't it? Doesn't that silence answer everything?
Let's we finished 17th in the league.
So there's still 3 years to this project. Potentially.
Mate,
don't you think he deserves a chance?
You want to fucking laugh in my face? Let me tell you something. You want to laugh? You say to my face, yeah.
Who are you talking directly at?
Who's laughing at you?
You are.
I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing at everybody talking while Sim's trying to say something.
Arian's going to have to go in a minute. I was trying to get him to. He wants the last word before he leaves. So I was trying to get.
Go on, Arian. You speak, man.
Yeah, I was just about to leave, but I just wanted to really quickly in 1 minute just summarize my position and then leave. I think Ange should stay. I actually was a bit surprised to hear the stuff about Frank. I quite like Frank. I think he's a good manager. I do agree with the thing about maybe Glasner has a bit more European pedigree and just winning trophies. So I can see that one for sure. But I also think people don't realize how I think that Brentford squad outside of a couple players is absolutely fucking abysmal. So that's why I quite like Frank. I think he's overachieved a lot, and I think overachieving is the number one requirement to being anything at Spurs because our squads are always overrated. They're not particularly good, so maybe you can get something out of that. But I absolutely think you should. The reason I think you should stay is because if we wanted to sack him, we should have done it in December or in January. The fact that we gave him the season,
I agree.
Said
if
you save it, we've done okay. Save it, go. You have a Europa League, save it, and he did that. You can't sack him now. It just doesn't make sense. If you wanted to sack him, you should have done it earlier. You can't give him the season, have him do that, and then sack him. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
I think there's an absolute merit in keeping him. There's an absolute merit in sacking him. 100%.
I don't think it's completely unmerited to sack him. I agree with that, but I just think it'd be dumb if if we had this decision, we're going to sack him at the end of the season, no matter what. We should have just done it in December.
But what do you expect? Do you genuinely think that this guy has shown recently, right? Again, the 26 points that we got in the first 10 games, and you can put it down to whatever. I personally see it as a period whereby no one knew who we were. And I think but maybe that's not your stance in the first 10 games, right? But those 26 points absolutely buffered what happened after that.
Sure.
To the point where we finished 5th, right?
Yeah.
Since then, the second season, the league was a shit show. And again, there's merit to the argument that there's reasons why it finished the way it did, right? The injuries, the deprioritization. And I don't have a problem necessarily with it. I have a problem with the words and the way it was dressed up, where there's no accountability in the way I perceive him. But in any event, moving forward, Stell said, would you have taken a European trophy in year 2? Of course, anyone would have done. But the other side of the argument, the people that are Ange out, when people that are Ange out get given all the hate that they do, they are sitting there saying everyone that's Ange in is romanticizing over a moment, over 90 minutes of football. When Ange himself, again, another thing that he said that people seem to forget is, if you didn't like me yesterday, don't like me tomorrow. Right? If you didn't think I was a good manager yesterday, you shouldn't think I'm a good manager tomorrow. One game shouldn't change that. And yet for so many people, Ben, Stell, and not you, Sim, but for so many people, one game did change that. And I'm just saying, on that basis, and on the basis of the 17th in the league and 38 points, which would have gotten 22 league defeats, by the way, would have got every team that had 22 league defeats relegated in every other season. I believe this is a stat that someone said to me. I haven't verified it, but 22 league defeats would have had every other team that would have had that in any other season, bar this one, relegated.
Our points total has only been relegated once before.
That's not true.
Our points total once. Our points total
since 1991, so the Premier League started. Yeah. That's not true.
Our points total, yeah. I don't know about the number of losses, but we've won more games than the teams have got.
Points total, I think.
Let me just,
the last 10 years, we would have got relegated 0 times.
Quickly point. Right, so on the basis that you're taking Ange on his word, which I think most of you seem to do, then he said, "Don't change your mind on me based on one game of football."
I don't know if you know anything about me. I have not changed. But I've gone on Stale's show.
I'm talking to the audience as well. I'm talking just generally, right? People that are on the Ange outside get a hell of a lot of heat saying you're a disgrace, you're not celebrating a trophy, yada yada yada. And I'm sure people on the Ange inside are getting the same shit for different reasons. But I'm just saying that there is merit to sacking him. There's merit to keeping him based on what your priorities and your expectations are. I'm just saying that next season, we don't have the luxury of playing in the Europa League. We have to play the very best in the Champions League. We have to play all the same teams we usually do in our bread and butter, which is the Premier League. And I'm asking why it is that it's such a strain, such a harsh thing to say that this guy is not the guy to take us forward based on the new level of complexity that we have to challenge on next year.
Sean, who would you bring in as manager then? Because, and I'm just asking because Iriola, Thomas Frank and Glasner are not proven in Champions League either. So who do we bring in that we can realistically attract? Well, we can guarantee the next guy is going to do well in that Champions League, because I don't know who you bring in then.
Okay, so I'll answer that real quick. I have already... Real quick, but I would love to get an answer to the question that I just asked. But just quickly, I've already said, Stell, that I don't think that I'm not an Ange out unconditionally. I think that it is conditional on someone coming in that's better or someone that can take us forward. And for me, when you see that Inzaghi's probably going to Saudi Arabia to chase the money, when you see that Glasner said that he's 99% staying, when you see all these things that are chalking themselves off, I'm sitting there thinking the shortlist that I would be willing to roll the dice on is getting fewer and fewer. And if it's Thomas Frank, if I'm entirely honest, like I'm okay with Thomas Frank, but I'm also okay staying. If you're offering me Marco Silva, no, thank you. I'll stick with Ange Postecoglou. Like there's many managers out there that I wouldn't roll the dice for, so I'm not unconditionally Ange out. But there's a couple that I would. I'd be more than interested in seeing what Xavi can do. I'd be more than interested in seeing what Glasner can do. I'd be more than interested in seeing what Edin Terzic can do. I'd be more than interested in seeing what Inzaghi can do if he's interested. But of the people that of the rest of them, not really that bothered. But I still would love to know the answer to that question of what it like. Why is it that's such a harsh thing to think that Ange doesn't deserve next season?
Sean, I don't have an issue with anyone who's Ange out because I've been there. I get it, right? I don't have an issue with it. My issue is how quickly they went there after the cup final with these really, in my opinion, miserable chats and just blew up whatever happy moment we've waited for 17 years into this toxic back and forth. That was my gripe with it. If you're Ange out, I get it. Listen, I get where Johnny's coming from. I get where you're coming from.
I wasn't in that misery. Can I just to add to that, right?
I never labelled you as the misery.
Yeah.
In private chats, I'll call you that, right? Publicly, I haven't done it yet.
I'm just saying, I wasn't. If you looked at all my stuff, everything I was posting was positive. I didn't do one Ange out. Ange has got to go. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Go and check.
Look, whoever is Ange out, I don't have an issue with them being Ange out. I don't think they should move from it because I think they'll be forcing themselves to move from it. You got to believe it. I believe this manager, with these group of players, removing some of them and being backed with some quality players, I think he can surprise us. I think he's got trophies in him. And do you know what? I think this is the difference with me. From what I've understood from a lot of chats, a lot of fans want us to be much better in the league and challenge for trophies. I don't think we're ready for that leap. If you look at Man United when Fergie went there, when Chelsea before Abramovich came, they went for a period of winning Cup Winners' Cup, Europa Cup, FA Cup, Carabao Cup, and then they made that leap to Premier League. I think what we're trying to do is win a trophy, right, now go be really, really good in the league. I think we should go for a period, if we can, of 4 or 5 years. Just win some trophies, man. Put trophies in the cabinet, make it a habit.
How many teams get back trophies, though?
Yeah, Sean, agreed. It's very difficult, but I think Spurs have got what it takes to win Carabao Cups and FA Cups, at least over the next 4 years. Like 2 more trophies, I think we've got it in us.
Do you think it's harder to win the Carabao Cup or to win the Europa League in its current version? bearing in mind, right? The FA Cup, I think, is actually easy to win because you get its own.
Other than Liverpool,
the Carabao Cup, you have to figure out.
The reason I say Europa is because you have to qualify through the league to get there.
Yeah, but in the season that you're participating,
you're in the Carabao automatically every single season.
And
then win.
Okay. I'm going to say Europa for one reason. I'm going to say Europa for one reason. Most teams in the Carabao Cup up until the semi-final, they play a weakened team. And also, the Carabao Cup, it's six games and you're in the final or something. Europa, we had to go through a lot of games to get there, a lot of rotation, playing a lot of teams we've got no idea about.
Game in the Europa League. You can lose. We lost to Galatasaray. Right? You can lose a game in the Europa League. You can't
get in the group stage.
No, it's definitely harder to win the Carabao Cup, surely.
But you've got to finish in that top 8. You've got to finish in that top 8, which we nearly didn't in the Europa to get straight to the knockout stages.
Still, can I just say, right?
My view is I think the Europa's harder, but not by a mile, not by this huge chasm.
You're not going to come up against any Champions League teams in the Europa. You're going to come up against them in the Carabao.
PSG.
We all said Bilbao and Lazio and Galatasaray are really tough teams.
What do you mean? There are teams that qualify for the Champions League in the Europa. A few of them. Quite a lot.
PSG
teams that have qualified in their league this season have been in the Europa
next season, but you're not going to get Champions League.
This season, what do you mean? They're clearly good enough to be in the Champions League next season.
Okay, so who's better? Who's better, Frankfurt or Liverpool? Frankfurt or Man City? Frankfurt or Arsenal? You know what I mean? It's different.
Yeah, but Liverpool's
the only tough team we played in the Carabao Cup.
They best players. They get knocked out earlier.
I'm not talking about who you did play. I'm just saying what is harder, and by the proxy of what is harder, you have to then invoke the hardest possible path, right? So this season in the Europa League, the hardest possible path would have included teams like maybe Lazio, Bilbao, Manchester United, whatever, right? Roma, something like that.
Frankfurt, yeah.
In the hardest possible path in the Carabao Cup, in the second round, you could pick Arsenal, third round Liverpool, fourth round City, fifth round Aston Villa, sixth round in the 2 legs against Newcastle, and then whoever's left in the final. So on that basis, in the hardest possible pathway to the final, which is figuring out what is harder potentially, surely the Carabao Cup, especially when I think the Carabao Cup potentially is even harder than the FA Cup, because the FA Cup at least you get individual weekends dedicated to it. The Carabao Cup, similar to the Europa League, you have to fight on 2 games a week.
But also Carabao Cup, the bigger teams do rest people, rest players.
And you're in it every year. And we get a bye to a third round.
Okay, sure. Do you know what? Let's say you're right, and the Carabao Cup's harder. No one's won the Carabao Cup since 2008 at this club either.
No, that's what I mean. So when you said that we need to focus on let's become a cup team for a little while, I'm saying that next season we don't have the luxury of the Europa League. We have to, if we're going to do that, and not that I think we should reset our expectations to winning cups every year, because no one does apart from City or a couple of other teams at the very, very top end. But in that world where you want to do that, next season, in order to do that, you have to do it in 2 competitions, which I would make the argument are more harder to win than the Europa League.
Well, look at
You're not going to win the Champions League.
I'm just saying the
Champions
Champions
out of
League.
our grasp, though. We can win those competitions next
Yeah, but
season.
in the
Semi-final this year, the Carabao, and I know we obviously flopped in the second leg.
What are we going to do next season, though, in the Champions League? When you look at teams like PSG, right, Real Madrid,
we're not going to win the Champions League, correct?
No, we're not. I know we're not. What I'm saying is that those three teams were
joking. I've already booked Budapest, man.
They were struggling to get through. They went to almost the last game. They almost went to the very last game.
Yeah,
to get through. That's how challenging the Champions League's going to be for us. So how are we going to prioritize that? You know, are we going to say, well, we're in the Champions League, it's very important we try to get in the top 8, which will be very difficult, or we're just going to try and get in the top 16?
Hopefully next season, Romero and Van de Ven aren't coming back from 4-month injuries, and we have to prioritise that we had in the second half of the season.
But Romero and Mickey Van de Ven will not be able to play Champions League, come back, play the game on Saturday, and every single week.
Not every week, but more often than what we've done between.
Johnny, we need to sign better players. Then it goes back to that. Look, at the end of the day, Pochettino, he got us to semi-finals and got us top 4 every year.
Aston Villa can do it.
The domestic cups were a disaster, absolute catastrophe. So either we, and this is what I was saying.
So that's what I'm saying. Where do we go? Where do we go? Where do we go with this? Because fans will want us to do.
We need to back a manager, Johnny. We need to back a manager.
But still, I'm quite surprised you going here because you actually had a go at Ange because he's had 4 transfer windows, okay, and he's had more money than any other manager. That's
because he accepted crap players. I called him a yes man for accepting players like Werner, who I don't believe for 1 second was his signing.
Okay, Werner wasn't a signing. Werner was a joke, and it was a loan signing. I'm talking about
signed him twice.
Yeah, and who signed him? Who agreed to
who did sign him? Tell me.
Well,
your manager.
Yeah, but the thing is, we do this every year. If it's not Werner, it's Danjuma. It's Danjuma under Conte. If it's not him, it's Vinicius under Mourinho. If it's not him, it's Nkudu and NG under Poch. We make these similar stupid signings regardless of manager, which is why I just feel it's the club that does this shit.
Yeah, but hang on. Look, Fabio. Can we agree that Fabio at least signed us players who have got an intrinsic value, right?
He's better than Lange. He's better than Lange, Johnny. All day long. I agree. 100%.
They've fallen off. There's, apart from Bergvall, right? The signings haven't been remarkable. But I'm just saying to you, Ange has made it very clear that no player will be coming into this club unless he demands it. Now, he demanded Gallagher, couldn't get it, right? He didn't want Eze, didn't want him, right? And there are other players.
Look who we got instead of Gallagher, Johnny. Look who we got in the 6. Archie Gray. Come on. Come on. But are we going to blame the manager for that?
How many times did you hear him say, Ange got on the phone? I only came here because of Ange, right? Come on. You can't say he didn't have any part to play in it because all we kept hearing.
Yeah, but then when Conte says, "Oh, Spencer's a club signing," we criticise Conte for saying that as well. Obviously he's going to publicly back him, isn't he?
And the club were right to sign Jess Spence, weren't they? It just took 3 years to figure it out.
Yeah. Well,
look,
my chairman.
I think we all agree, right? I think we all agree.
Today, what about tomorrow?
Do we all agree, right? Do we all agree that if the club had £150 million to spend, we'd rather see 3 really good players join than 7 or 8?
100%.
So until that changes, I don't think. Look, get rid of Ange, bring in Glasner. He will come unstuck eventually as well when 100%. He has to deal with a different expectation of Tottenham fans and a different caliber of player.
But still, do you not think, you see, for me, what I want...
They finished 4th in the league as well, Palace. Let's not forget that.
Oh, 100%. But what I want to see is a coach, not a philosopher, come into the club, hands-on coach, improve the young players to bring them through to the point where we can achieve this 3 players buying 3 positions, because Mikey Moore has developed into a position where that left side or through the middle, he's made it his own, or whoever else comes through the academy, right? That we can go out and spend 60 million on Eze and 60 million on Brian Mbuemo and like 40 million on a creative midfielder or a quality left centre back like a Hincapié or whoever, right? My point is, if we keep doing that, then we will go places. But I feared we were going to sign Dominic Solanke, and I'm never going to question the fact that he works hard, right? Honestly, I'm all for it. He works hard, but he was never the guy. Honestly, he wasn't the guy at Chelsea. He wasn't the guy at Liverpool. He wasn't brilliant at Bournemouth until Iriola told him, "Stop dropping deep. I want you to work the centre backs, and that's all I want you to do, and we'll get the balls into you." And that's when his work rate came up. But Ange signed a player and not played to his strengths.
Johnny, who do we sign as a striker, right? On whatever low wages Solanke's on, who do we sign that can do it on those wages?
Last season, right, for 70 million, not even 70 million euros, right? Last season. Okay, the thing is with Gyökeres, everyone's looked at him a bit like they looked at Harry Kane in the early days. One season wonder. He won't do it next season. He won't do it next season. I keep saying it, and he just keeps doing it.
All right, but Solanke came last summer, right? So last summer, who could we have realistically signed for the same money Solanke that's going to get us 20 goals a year? What, last summer?
Well, Solanke didn't get us 20 goals. He scored 9 league goals.
I know, but we want someone that can score 20 goals, right? Who can we sign that gets 20 goals that's going to accept the salary that Solanke
right now? There's 5 strikers out there, and there's only 3 clubs that are going for strikers. Sorry, Ben.
I'm saying, what world do you live in where we think we can sign Gyökeres?
Well, we could have signed him last season. What do you mean? What world do we live in? That's the world we can live in, because we could have bought him, but Ange wanted Solanke. Ange saw something in Solanke. He came out and said he was the only player that I wanted as my number 9. The only player. I didn't want anybody else.
Yeah, but I don't think Gyökeres is going to do the workhorse thing that Ange Postecoglou wants from the sacrificial lamb and the 9.
Have you seen how physical he is? And
but that's
intelligent.
Johnny, you're just looking at the type of player. Like Ange has, like when
I don't think Gyökeres comes to Spurs, mate. I don't think
he didn't come to Spurs anyway. I don't think he would come to Spurs anyway last season. The point is, mate, is that in Celtic's model of Ange Postecoglou, Kyogo Furuhashi was also a sacrificial lamb. He was that 9 role is built and set up in a way that's different to the way you would traditionally use a striker. And Dominic Solanke, as much as strikers are judged on their output, like why is my screen gone with? Dominic Solanke is a perfect guy for the version of a 9 that Ange Postecoglou wants.
I think 65 million. To spend 65 million on a player that you want to use as a workhorse is baffling in some respects to me. Well, I mean, were you still happy and that was the guy that you wanted? I
was very underwhelmed when we signed Solanke. Right. Very underwhelmed, massively. Okay. I'd never believed for 1 second he'll get 20 goals at Spurs, especially when Bournemouth, the way they play.
Correct.
The service he got was very different from the way the wingers play at Bournemouth compared to how we play. I thought, well, how's this going to work? And it didn't work. So I wasn't shocked that he's had he did miss 2-3 months of the season as well to give him a little bit of leeway. But
and a lot of you got to say as well, a lot of Brendan Johnson's goals have come indirectly from Solanke as well. Yes, that's also true.
100%. A lot of Johnson's output is reflected in Solanke. So a lot of Solanke's output is reflected in Johnson's.
We just got some super chats, so we just got to get. We'll have to read them out because people have sent them in.
I'm going to jump off, guys. My screen's breaking. I think my whole computer's overheating, so I'm going to jump off now.
Okay. Lovely. Nice to see you, Shawnee. Appreciate you coming on. Joyce there. Michael Hellman says our club is behaving like peak Chelsea under Abramovich to then return to Levy-nomics, laughing my ass off. Either way, time to thank Ange and move on. Our club is so like he's saying, so like Abramovich was very ruthless, wasn't he? Even if you won a trophy, you finish second, you're out.
Correct.
But we're not that club. We're not that club. We're a club that have been starved of trophies for so many years. This is all the fans have wanted for so many years.
I think the point he's making is like recently, obviously, we got rid of Jose Conte very ruthlessly. And now potentially with a pivot to Frank, who's known for not spending a lot, overperforming his wage, the wage bracket, is Levy going to use that as a way of like continuing to underspend and hoping Frank can overperform?
Frank's a fake Pochettino. That's what he is.
A fake
100%.
Pochettino.
Tell
I
me,
wouldn't be surprised.
did Iraola give? I mean, listen. Whatever you think about Iraola, but Iraola does.
I like Iraola.
He gives me Poch vibes. I'm not going to deny.
I agree. I agree,
It
John.
really does. It really does give me Poch vibes. There's something about it I can't
It's
quite.
probably just the way he speaks English.
It might be.
Phil P says, "Will Frank want to re-sign Reguilon?" Oh God,
Doubt it,
Yeah,
man.
he
God,
liked Reggie. Let me say that's a great question, Phil. He rated him and he spoke highly. He says we just can't afford him.
we'll give Reguilon a new contract. We'll re-sign him.
Thomas Frank tried to sign our whole squad, didn't he? Archie Gray, he had him through the door. Brennan Johnson, he tried to sign as well.
Noosa.
Noosa. I remember. Yeah, we were both going for him.
Oh, well, he's playing well now, isn't he? He was.
Guys, we're in the same pool as Brentford going for players.
Thomas Frank isn't bad, but tell me what he's done that Ange hasn't. Like, if you look at their CVs, Ange is better. The one thing that people are clinging on to is, but Frank can coach players. He can coach. We need more than a coach. We need a winner at this club. We need someone that can win and coach.
Yeah, but we need
as well. What opportunities has Frank had?
Come on, he's had no opportunities. And listen,
why has no other big club gone in for him?
Still, they have.
Why has no other big club gone in for him then? Why? What? There must be something there.
He turned them down, mate. He didn't want to go the shit show that. Yeah, he turned them down. That's a fact.
Where?
But I'll just ask you a question.
Which clubs? Just so.
Well, I know Man United came in for him.
Maybe he couldn't handle Man United, Johnny. Maybe he looked at it and thought, I can't do that job. That's massive. That's no good, is it?
I just say to you, you weren't part of the conversation at the beginning when we were talking about this. When I said when Howe had lost his job or left by mutual consent from Bournemouth, and we were having managerial issues, and Howe was a guest. I don't know if it was Levy on the board, but he was in the West Stand and walking around, and fans were in uproar. We don't want Howe. What has he ever done? He's never won anything. All he's done, he's been managing Bournemouth. He's got no idea about the big time. He's not for Europe. He's had no European experience. He's not for us.
I rated Eddie Howe. I rated him because I know his story. He got Bournemouth from the brink of bankruptcy. He got them promoted back to back. I know his story. I would have taken him at Spurs.
But let me tell you, most of them didn't because he hadn't done anything, right? Frank got them promoted. Frank got them promoted into the Premier League and has kept them there, right? So that's an achievement. But my point is that fans, I'm not saying that I want
Johnny,
Frank.
listen to Frank. This is Frank in the Premier League. He finished 13th, 9th, 16th, and 9th.
Right. Still, right? The fact of the matter is he's
and year one with no Kane,
right.
5th.
Still, you've changed.
Big up to Moose City, man. Big up.
I'm bringing the data forward.
I know, but still, come on, right?
I think Frank is a sideways step. I don't think it's a forward step. That's what I'm saying.
Budget. He's working with a limited budget, and the other thing is what I was trying to say to you.
I'll give you that. He is working with limited budget. That's fair.
Well, what I'm trying to say here is that we look at Frank, and Frank isn't my number one in any shape, well, form, but fans have gone mental. Thomas Frank, what has he ever won? What has he ever done? But the same comments were levelled at Eddie Howe. You know, what's he done at Bournemouth? You know, he's never won anything at Bournemouth. He's never done this. He's never done that. And Newcastle fans, a lot of them were very underwhelmed when he got the job. They weren't overly happy. They thought that they would sign a big manager. And
Johnny, it's different. It's different because Eddie Howe got back promotions from the absolute bottom to the top. He consistently got promoted. I'm looking at it now. Thomas Frank, 11th in the Championship. The next season, lost the playoffs. In the third season, he didn't come first or second. He won in the playoffs. He for me, if I was to compare their history, Eddie Howe's got a much better CV.
He lost Watkins. He lost. I mean, then he had to come back with
Harry Kane.
I know. I'm just saying, but for someone like Bournemouth to lose Watkins, look at the players that they sold. was sold.
Yeah, but I rate Eddie Howe, Johnny. I rate Eddie Howe.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing with you about Eddie Howe. It's Thomas Frank that I'm arguing. For me, I think Thomas Frank is a sideways move. I think we're going from this to this. If you said to me, get Eddie Howe Glasgow, I'd say, all right, I can see a way forward here. I can picture it. I can meet you halfway with it. But for me, Frank is he's just a mid-table manager.
Still as well. A lot of people did say that about Pochettino when we signed him.
That's what I'm saying. What did Poch do?
Poch finished 7th with Southampton, playing some of the best football in the Premier League. Absolutely mind-blowing football.
He came through, and he produced some fantastic young talent, right, through the Southampton Academy. And look, all I'm saying to you is that with Thomas Frank, although I'll say it again, he's not my number one choice.
You're just desperate to change manager. I reckon you take Beth, the tea lady. If the tea lady took over, I think you'd.
It's very difficult for me to listen to you.
Guys, one second. We'll carry on this. Let me just get through the super chats. People have said.
I'm winding you up.
No, it's difficult for me to listen to you because I've so listened to you the whole season going Ange out. So am I having the same conversation with the same guy?
We'll get into that. Moose City, big up to Moose City with a big
up to you, Moose City. So generous, man.
That's very generous.
Very generous. Big up Moose City. He says, hello, guys. I'm currently in the camp of leaning Ange in purely because to start over seems counterproductive. But Levy just needs to make a decision. I just want to know who my manager is. Watching rivals make signings and we don't even know who our manager is kills me.
Spot on.
This is the worst thing. This is the worst thing of it all, the unknown. It's just like, if you're going to make a decision, just make the bloody decision already. It's driving everyone nuts.
I think the thing is what I was told, Ben Sim, still that, I don't think that they felt that they even, if they'd made the decision they wanted to sack him, which they had, that it was the right thing to do with the euphoria of everything that came on. It just would not have looked right in that opening week. It just wouldn't have. And as you said, still, when you came on, we're all joking around here, but we've all been a good mood. We've all been smiling all week. It's been
lovely to see.
Yeah, and you look on people's feeds, and they're still posting stuff from Bilbao and from the parade and some of the events and things that they've been to, and seeing the parade in Thailand, which was a brilliant thing. That was absolutely superb. And the celebrations in LA and pubs and things. It's been a beautiful thing to see over the last week. So I don't think that they could have made that decision because it would have killed everything. And I think as this week goes on, midweek, the dust has settled. Fans will clarity.
It hasn't settled. We're still celebrating all the way through the summer. If you can't sack him a few days after, you can't sack him a week after, man.
Well, we'll see.
Johnny, can I ask you a question? Mate, Johnny, can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question? Right? This is, in fact, everyone, because this is one thing I still can't get. I've got no answers to this, and I never understood it when it was happening. Why did he stick with Ange when we were falling apart in the league? That the fans were losing their minds. Why did he stick with him and take this massive gamble with the club finances and this massive punt on winning the Europa, do or die situation, to then pull it off and say, you know what? Let's sack him now. Why would you do that?
Like, you know what
it is, Stel.
I don't get it. It just seems mad to me, the whole thing.
I made two bets.
He looked at the situation. He saw the injuries, the amount of players we had available to us. And he's like, no manager is going to come in and do anything different to what he's doing right now. So what's the point of making a change? And then we got progressed. We got further into the Europa League. And he's like, look, we got a chance to win it now.
Yeah, but you remember in January when I came on your show and I said, guys, he's got to be sacked now whilst we can save the season.
We had no players at that
before the FA Cup. Yeah, but my point was another manager tactically changes us so we've got a chance of winning. And he didn't do it. He said, no, we're going to stick with this guy's tactics and we're going to stick with this manager. So they went with it against everything we were, a lot of us were saying. And then he pulls it out the bag. Mm-hmm. And now they want to say, well, you know what? Okay, get rid of him. Why did you take that gamble then?
What's interesting, is Ange, or if you believe what he said when he made the decision, after the transfer window to basically prioritize this Europa League and put everything into it, He said that a few people inside the club not everyone was in favour of that, right? And so we'll beg the question: was Levy part of the people in favour or not in favour? Because if he wasn't if he wasn't in favour of it, surely he would have been sacked. But if he was in favour, then surely he would have known that this was how the season was. If it was going to be a successful one, this was how it was going to pan out. So after he came through that and we won it, then why would, if that was a decision that he agreed with, why is he then now saying, well done, you're now sacked, even though he agreed with that? He agreed with how he dealt with it. So that's what's confusing at the moment. I agree with you.
Munn and Lange were 100% behind Ange. But listen, I found it really difficult to understand, like you were saying, Stel, because, you know, the final end of last season, I went to all those games, and, you know, to lose 5 of the 7 games, and the only wins were against Sheffield United and Burnley, Sheffield United away and Burnley at home. And then I was convinced there's no way this guy's going to last till Christmas. And, you know, when I saw the same crap continuing, the football was no good. I made those bets at the start of the season, and I made 2 £25 bets that he'd be gone before Christmas, lost both of them. Someone else, I was about to make another bet that someone said, no, I wanted to make £100 bet. I was just absolutely convinced he was going to be gone. And as it got worse and worse and worse, I was going, well, how is this guy? And I'm listening to TalkSport, people ringing up every single game. How's this guy not getting sacked? What's Levy pushing? Why hasn't he pressed the button? You know, he sacked Mourinho. He sacked, you know, this one. He sacked Nuno after X amount of games, who had a better record. And it just went on and on and on. And he just got to the stage where he's never going to, he's just not going to sack him. It was so un-Levy-like. You know, one wondered what was going on. You know, I used to joke, he's obviously got pictures of Daniel up to no good, because I just couldn't figure it out.
Well, I think it's fair to, in my opinion, I think the decision's been justified keeping him on because Yeah. Now, of course, it's been justified. All right, more super chats. Malware says sacking Ange would likely be seen as an unwarranted and potentially damaging decision, disrupting the positive momentum he's earned. Come on, you Spurs. Yeah, I think that's what Stell's been saying, you know, the dressing room and stuff like that. You know, why disrupt if there's a good kind of atmosphere there? Deck W says we should keep Ange to finish 19th and win the Champions League.
I'll take that.
I'll take the Champions League.
And relegation.
I would take relegation and a Champions League, mate.
Champions League? Are you mad? That would be, oh my word. I'll take you in the Championship or in Champions League. I'll take you in the Champions League.
You will never see a bigger parade in your life at any club.
Come on, guys.
Team that got relegated.
All on black. Your house, the lot, everything on black. Go the whole season. Getting snapped and all down.
For a Champions League, I would take it. I would go down.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
All down to one.
Big up to Marcelo and Ezra, become a YouTube members. Big up to them. Marcelo, is that the Marcelo? I hope so.
Yeah, it's the Marcelo.
God, I haven't seen him in a while.
I'm telling you,
the OG, mate. The OG.
I'm telling you, bro.
I'm telling you. Essa Al-Shamari says, I would only back a change if we have a clear long-term project with the manager picked. Otherwise, what is the point?
Isn't this a long-term project? Isn't that what we were told? This is a long-term
project. I mean, it's a
project.
3rd year. It's more than any manager since Poch, isn't it? This would be long-term. For sure, and obviously he'll be harshly judged. This is the year he'll be as harshly judged, I think, Ange, if he stays. Jerome says, are we for real? We're in a Champions League and we're talking about Frank to be the man to take us there. This club and this fan base cannot be for real. Yeah, when you put it like that, it's like, yeah, maybe, I don't know what we're kind of doing by making this move. Rich Frith says Spurs sacking Ange is peak Spursy. We finally win something and sack the man who took us to the promised land. Levy out.
You know what's surprising? You know what's very surprising? I expected in the press to hear them say, well, this is ridiculous. How can you sack the manager? But they're not. A lot of them are saying, well, we can understand it. So there isn't the...
Who's saying that? What people? What do you mean, pundits?
In the press, pundits and press, right. And people that. Yeah, they're not saying this is madness. You know, Spurs. I thought they would maybe say that, but they haven't.
Johnny, from what I've heard, right, and reading, they're exactly like us. You've got certain journalists who are saying Spurs will be mad to sack Ange after what he's done. Then you've got other journalists saying if Spurs don't sack him, you can't take Spurs serious. Then you've got some journalists saying, well, if they sack him, we understand it. If they kept him, we can also see sense in it. I'm finding the press are just like us Spurs fans. They're just as divided.
They might wait until he is sacked, and then they'll come out the woodwork saying,
yeah. They'll all come out and show their true colours.
Yeah. Esther says the guy on the top right is just doing whataboutism. I think that was when Johnny was top right, just to make that clear.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what point he's made. I don't know what point he was talking about. Phil P says great debate, huge love, winners 2025. Woo! Come on, Phil P. Malware says, and in season 3 will be a banger. Can't wait. Being up season 3. Scorpion Fan Survive says, was Ange out, but he gave me my best moment as a fan. Yeah, which is definitely what a lot of people feel. And Jerome says, because the club and Ange knew from January that the league campaign was over because of injuries and Europa was the only thing to save the season. I'm guessing that's why he's saying we prioritise.
Yeah. All I know is that I heard the script that he's proposed is totally unbelievable, and they're going to cancel it, and they'll be shooting season 3 with a different star.
Well, John, if I told you beginning of the season, 17th and Europa League, you'd have said we jumped the shark, wouldn't you?
Well, how many people? Let me tell you something. How many people had that conversation? I mean, like,
I know we actually went and did it.
Loads of people had that conversation. Would you take a cup? Would you take the Europa Cup and 17th? Would you take relegation and Europa Cup? You know, and then it came to pass.
I took it. I said 100% I'd take it. I just never believed he'd do it. I thought there's no way this guy's going to do it. No chance.
There's another one here from a Moose City. Big up to you, Moose City, man. Unbelievable. Says one of my real concerns is that we have not looked like a good side, but I'm happy to give him 10 games. And I think he deserves that, man. He deserves it.
Listen, he might still get it. And then you guys will be happy as Larry, and I'll have to eat some humble pie and get on board.
Johnny, do you think what do you think the outcome's going to be? Do you think he's going to get sacked?
Yeah.
No, I
don't think he's going to get sacked. I think he deserves to go out with some dignity, and I think mutual consent. I've got.
That's just a way to make up him getting sacked. Like he doesn't want to go.
Well, listen, he said, "I'm not bothered." He said it in the press conference. I'm not bothered.
He also said he wants to be here and he wants to stay.
He said, "I'm not bothered. I'll get another job." Right.
But after that, he said that he wants to be here and he wants to keep his job.
A lot of things. That's the problem. If you keep saying loads of things, some of them are going to be right. But listen, for me, if he leaves a legend. Right, you'll never ever take that away from him. None of the players that played in that.
Say that again.
He'll go as a legend. His league form was like a leg end, but as from a European perspective, it's legendary. It's legendary. No one will give a shit about everything else that went on that season. Exactly. back in the season, and those players, the Romeros and the Mickey van der Vens, in 30 years' time or 20 years' time, they'll be coming around to the stadium. And, they'll be, taking photographs with young kids and doing all the rest of it and enjoying the moment that the current legends do. Mind you, I did see David Howe's and the Legends Parade, and I was thinking, legend?
91 FA Cup winner, mate.
I know. Legend.
If Ange gets sacked, do you think there'll be a backlash from the fan base?
Yeah, I think there will be certain sections. Yeah,
half of Australia, mate. Listen, look, I have
backlash.
I've decided
more the match day fans, the ones that can actually make an impact.
No, I don't think so. Listen,
he's going to be on his one-man protest outside the stadium.
I think if he does it early enough, let's say we hear this week he's sacked, and by 2 months' time, already Frank's already instilled and blah blah blah. I think people by the season started would have gotten behind Frank, but for sure for the next week or so, for the next few days, there's going to be backlash 100%.
I think there'll be a load of Australians down there with their didgeridoos, complaining about what's going on. Listen, I was going to Australia, but I've had to tell the wife we better cancel that until Ange. I'm not.
They've got a picture up here on the airport. Don't let this guy in, and Border Patrol.
I'll get
literally Johnny's most wanted man in Australia right now.
Definitely not popular in Australia, especially with that hippie bloke. I feel like if we appoint Frank, I've got a feeling we're not apart from maybe we get like Mbeumo in early. I feel like we're not going to make many signings up until maybe after pre-season.
Sim, when has a manager ever signed for Spurs and brought a player from the club he came from?
Yeah, I can't remember too many.
Conte bought Perisic. Can you count that?
Yeah. Did Joe?
Would you be happy? I mean, if
Frank clutching at straws, but yeah, I guess so.
If Frank came with Mbeumo, I mean, it's not going to happen. But if Frank came with Mbeumo, you'd be happy. I actually don't even think it's Frank. I mean, I wouldn't.
I have to say, if they do a double announcement on the same day, Frank and Mbeumo, I think there'll be no backlash.
What's going to happen is we're going to announce Frank, and then Arsenal are going to announce Mbeumo, and then there's going to be like fucking onslaught everywhere.
And then we're going to announce Tell's coming in on a 3-year deal.
What percentage chance do you think that the next manager, is not Thomas Frank and someone we haven't even thought of that we was going to be?
I think it very well could be, because we all know that Johan Lang likes to work in the darkness and all that kind of stuff.
Well, he won't be.
It's going to be like it'll probably be some random guy from Europe where you look into him. Oh, he's actually quite good, but I'm
not convinced Ange is gone, if I'm honest. I personally think Daniel Levy wants to keep Ange. I think he likes Ange. I think he's the fact he never dug him out or dug out the players or just played Levy's game. I think Levy actually likes the fact he's got someone that kind of plays with a professional Levy way of acting with the media. I think Levy wants to keep Ange and give him a chance, which is why he didn't sack him in January. But I think there's some very strong voices within the board of directors, Paraticis and whatnot, that are telling Levy, listen, you pay us to do a job, and we're telling you, mate, this is a disaster. If you do it, don't go down that road. I think this is why nothing's been decided yet.
Do you think they've jumped the gun?
Listen, guys, you know my thoughts on journalists, right? I don't believe anything anymore. After what I've heard them say in the past 2 years and what actually happened, I don't buy it. Until I see it, I don't believe it. But I think it's 50-50 if he goes or stays. I still think it's 50-50.
Fabio is doing the choosing, right? Johan Lang ain't choosing Jack, right? And let me tell you something, Fabio ain't coming back to work under Munn or Lang. Fact.
He's going to work above them.
So the project's over then? The project's over?
No, it's not over. He will be...
Well, if you get rid of Munn and you get rid of Lange and Ange, that was the project.
I'm just telling you.
The project's not over, it's just enhanced, mate.
Right. He is not working underneath them, okay? I'm just
working above them. Yeah, that's what they apparently he's going to be. Sporting director or something. So, do we think when Ange in the parade, when he said that line, season 3 better than season 2, was that him just throwing the gauntlet down to the board and leaving?
I think so.
100%.
100%.
Normally, season 3, the lead guy gets whacked and they're bringing a new guy. So,
I think Ange said that to rally the fans in his favour and to put pressure on splitting the fan base to back him over the board.
Exactly.
He's basically done it, and he's looking at Daniel Levy. He's like, "What? You're going to sack me now?" After that,
they love me. They love me, Daniel. They love me.
And there's going to be another camera when this documentary comes out, whenever it is. Maybe he'll be sacked by then, but I don't know when it's coming out.
Or the documentary will get all the Johnnies on side. They'll be like, "Oh, look! This is what really happened." Or it'll get me back to Ange. Maybe I'll go back to Ange.
I met the guy. I met the guy in Glasgow who was doing the documentary of the Youth and Academy for the BBC. He's been working there all year, and that will be coming out, I think, later on this year. I forgot to take his number. I keep bumping into him. I see him at all
What,
the
the Spurs
games.
Academy, Johnny?
Yeah. They've made a
Nice.
film about that. It's the BBC that he was doing it for. So that should be an interesting documentary when it comes out. He's been working on that one for quite a considerable time. In fact, because I saw him and I said I'll go down, and then since then I hadn't been to the academy because I've had a lot on this season. But it'll be interesting to see, guys. It's been thank you for having me on. I'm absolutely knackered.
I think we're going to end it anyway. Yeah.
I popped on.
Wrap it up. I'm tired too.
I said half an hour. I'll pop on with Sean for half an hour, and that was at 3:30 this afternoon. I swear to you, honestly, it's the longest.
Well, Johnny, you got another couple of hours. That's a 12-hour shift. We should just push through.
This is the longest I've done, and I won't be doing that.
Look, guys, I'll say one last thing before you wrap it up. If Ange stays, I'll be happy because I think he deserves a chance. If he gets sacked and a Glasner or above comes in, I'll back that manager. But if he gets sacked and we bring in a Frank or that level, I'm going to be seriously fed up again, because for me that's not progression.
Back to last year's still, or back to last 20 years.
I just see it as a sideways move. That's all. To me, that's not a step forward.
And I will say,
will you back him? You got to back him though.
Well, listen. What I will say is that if they keep Ange, as much as I don't want it, I will hope that he performs and he does the business, and I will get on board with it. I don't see it happening, but if he does, whatever happens and whatever my comments are here, I go to every single game hoping that the club win. I go in hope to win, and I even a player that I don't like or I'm not a big fan of, I hope he turns me round and scores the goal. Brennan Johnson was that player, because I used to call him Brenda Johnson because he was so weak in the tackle. Didn't tackle back, but he's not going to prove me wrong, but he's delivered, and I hope Ange does the same.
Johnny Malware says he doesn't agree with you, but he loves the hat. Big up from NYC.
Cheers, Carl.
And here's one for you guys: Ange and Romero or Franken and Buemo? Which one are you taking?
That's a good question.
I do want Mbeumo. I think
Romero's the winner, man. That's a horrible question. That's a horrible question.
I think.
No, which one are you taking?
That's a great.
I'm taking Romero and Mbeumo.
Yeah. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Still lovely to talk to you. And
boys,
thank you very much for having me on. Really
one more, just going to go for one more super chat and we'll clock off. Right. OD. No, feel free to leave.
Right. You can go, guys. Don't worry about it.
ODKK says, no way Ange said, give me Solanke and no one else. He was given a list of strikers that included average strikers, and Dom was the best option.
No. He insisted on Solanke. He's even come out and said he insisted on Solanke. He was the only one. I go and look back. It's the only striker I almost cried when I saw it.
You can't not believe anything he says and then stick on his every word on that one.
Yeah, exactly. And he's played him, and he's played him different to how I ever envisaged him playing. I couldn't understand why you signed a player like that and not play to his strengths.
Yeah, 100%.
As a goal scorer, no one ever questioned his work rate because you couldn't. It's been superb. Anyway, good night, God bless, and thanks for everyone listening to my nonsense. See
you later, Johnny.
Good night, everyone.
Stell, always a pleasure, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Just quick word on the poll. I'm just going to read out the results at the moment. We put a poll on Twitter with all the Ange talk and everything. What are you looking at? Keep Ange, appoint Frank, or appoint someone else? 66% with 3,000 votes. 66% keep Ange, 15.8 appoint Frank, and 18.2 appoint someone else.
Let me have a look at that. I didn't hear a word you just said. What was the poll? I didn't even see the poll.
On Twitter. Is Ange, appoint Frank, or appoint someone else with 3,000 votes?
Twice you did it. Oh, no, you retweeted it.
Yeah,
Frank appointment. Let's set them. Okay, so keep Ange 66%. That's pretty much the 66% has been in line with what it's been like.
I mean, the
Since
point
final,
Frank doesn't
basically.
seem very popular, does it?
Nah, the thing is though, I do think people are underestimating Frank.
I agree. I think he's a good manager. I do think he's a really good manager. I do think he's a cut above a lot of the other managers, you know, who do similar to him in terms of get a smaller side and get a mid-table. But it's still a risk. It's still a risk. You don't really know until he's in the job if it will translate. That's the truth.
Yeah. The thing is though, the people in the appoint someone else section, like, who do they actually want? They want unrealistic targets, probably. Simeone, Exagli, someone like that. Like, these managers aren't coming to us right now.
Agreed. All right. I think that's wrapped up. Big up to everyone.
Big up to everyone. Big up, big up, big up. We'll see you all tomorrow from the studio. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.
Spurs.
Ange in.